If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Chapter 41, Expedition. Welcome. As Riesel strolled through the door, Finn, engaged in a conversation with Riveria and Gareth, turned his head and greeted him. The other two also simultaneously turned their heads, focusing their gaze on his body. Their eyes held a look one gives upon finding treasure filled with satisfaction and contentment. Captain, Lady Riveria, Mr. Gareth. Riesel greeted each of the three top executives of the Familia one by one. His attitude wasn't overly respectful, but he maintained a proper amount of courtesy. Don't be too formal, just relax, okay? Just call my name directly. Riveria, breaking from her usual seriousness and strict demeanor, smiled at him. Don't be nervous, kid. We old folks just want to have a chat with you, not to scold you. Regarding you going out on your own to take on the floor boss of the 17th floor, Loki will be the one who will talk about it with you later. We're not playing the bad guys this time. Gareth spoke with a smirk while stroking his beard, making Riesel feel a bit awkward. Naturally, he wouldn't tell Gareth that Loki had already scolded him. After all, he hadn't informed anyone about his plan of soloing the floor boss. Even Lefia had some complaints about it. If he hadn't succeeded and leveled up, which diverted some of Loki and Lefia's attention, he might still be getting scolded by those two. Surprisingly, Ace seemed to be deep in thought since he successfully defeated the floor boss. She had been wearing a thoughtful expression all morning, making him somewhat worried that the doll princess might be influenced by him, leading to some reckless and dangerous actions. In this situation, Gareth's teasing made him feel a bit uneasy. It's really a mess. Riveria toned down her smile a bit, indicating that she didn't entirely approve of his risky actions. How's it going? Have you adapted to your new strength? Finn asked with a smile. Only Finn, who looked at Riesel, a super rookie who jumped from level 1 to level 4 in just over a month, spoke with a smile akin to a friendly brother, which relieved Riesel a bit. It's getting there. Riesel replied truthfully. With a couple more real battles in the dungeon, I should fully adapt. That's good. Finn nodded. The main reason we called you here this time is to check on your progress and prepare for the upcoming expedition. Expedition. Riesel was surprised at first, but soon, his eyes lit up. That's right, an expedition. Finn, seeing Riesel's expression, was somewhat helpless but also understanding. It's been over a month since our last expedition. It's time for our Familia to venture into the dungeon again. As one of the exploration-type Familia in Orario, Loki Familia had always been at the forefront of dungeon exploration. Just as adventurers explored dungeons as their main job, it was inevitable for big Familias to launch expeditions into the dungeon. However, for Familia like Loki Familia, which needed to venture to the depths below the 50th floor each time, the preparations alone took a lot of effort. Not to mention the resources required during expeditions, which often involved spending a considerable amount of time preparing. Food and water were secondary, as they could be obtained in the dungeon. The main preparations usually involved weapons, equipment, medicine, and special items to deal with various situations. Therefore, big Familias generally embarked on an expedition every 1 to 2 months. Now, it was the time. Finn, Riveria, and Gareth called Riesel here for this reason. Even though you've only been part of Familia for less than 2 months, technically, you shouldn't be immediately involved in such a significant Familia activity like an expedition. But, hey, you're already level 4 and we 3 want you to join us on the next expedition. It's a decision the 3 of us made, with Loki personally giving the green light. If you have any objections, feel free to voice them here. Finn explained with a friendly smile. Objections? Riesel didn't have any. Delving into the depths of the dungeon, battling high-level monsters that most people steer clear of, this was exactly what he had been hoping for. He had been eagerly anticipating an expedition for a while, and now that the opportunity was here, he wasn't about to pass it up. I have no objections. Riesel replied without hesitation. Please make sure I get to participate. He didn't hide his excitement and eagerness. This left Finn and the other two exchanging puzzled glances, followed by awkward smiles. See? I knew this kid would be excited. Gareth remarked, feigning irritation. We thought you'd be less trouble than Ace and the other kids, but it looks like we need to keep a close eye on you too. Riveria sighed. No objections, of course, are the best. Finn chuckled and shook his head. But considering the importance of the expedition and it's also your first time, think about whether there's anything you need to prepare for. His words prompted Riesel to sink into contemplation. There wasn't much he needed to do to prepare. For others, it might involve preparing armor and stocking up on medicines, but for him, thanks to his lightweight development ability, he preferred minimal equipment. Because of that, he had abandoned armor since reaching level 2. He also didn't need medicines to restore stamina or mind because his endless skill already granted him healing power and spirit healing development abilities at the highest rank, making him hardly feel fatigued. Coupled with the highest rank abnormal resistance, he was also fearless against abnormal statuses. Apart from high potions and elixirs for treating injuries, he didn't have much of a demand for other types of medicine. During the expedition, the Familia would take care of most of the medicine preparation, while Riesel hardly needed to fuss over that. In essence, his preparations were minimal. Though not entirely, since there was one important thing he needed to sort out. Riesel involuntarily shifted his gaze to his waist where a sword hung, strapped to his side. Finn noticed this. I see. Are you having trouble with your weapon? Finn asked in one breath, hitting the nail on the head. Riveria and Gareth exchanged a glance, surprisingly showing no signs of confusion. Is it because of Ace's magic? Riveria spoke up. Yeah. Riesel nodded, sighing. Due to the magic, my weapon couldn't keep up with my current power. The weapon he currently used was custom-made when he reached level 2. In the past battle against the crocodile dragon, his main weapon shattered under the strain of Ariel's maximum output. Afterward, he found a reputable weapon shop, provided the crocodile dragon's claw Freya had retrieved as raw material, and commissioned the blacksmith there to forge a new weapon. In the end, for 800,000 valis, with some financial assistance from Freya, he successfully obtained third-class equipment, the sword he now wielded. For third-class equipment, it should be more than enough for a second-class adventurer's main weapon. At least, if an average adventurer had it, they could continue using it even up to level 4 without being held back by their weapon. However, for him who possessed overpowered magic like Ariel, capable of putting an enormous strain on weapons at any time, using this third-class equipment made from the crocodile dragon's claw was becoming somewhat lacking. Moreover, he had now reached level 4, even when he was at level 2 or level 3, it was already quite risky. For example, during the encounter with the monster feast on the 16th floor, to break through and protect Freya, he once again unleashed Ariel's maximum output, resulting in a crack in the sword. During the duel with the floor boss of the 17th floor, he also once again unleashed Ariel's maximum output. At this moment, not just one but several cracks already appeared on his sword, almost breaking it outright. The damage from these two incidents forced him to spend a considerable amount of money on repairs. Now at level 4, his power had soared once again, and his Ariel was undoubtedly stronger than before. If he used Ariel in combat, even without reaching its maximum output, he could potentially destroy his sword. It was seriously affecting his ability to fight. Especially since he had acquired a development ability called swordsman, not having a good sword in hand would greatly impact his combat power. If there's anything I need to prepare thoroughly, it's probably finding a strong and sturdy weapon. Riesel said earnestly to the 3 top executives, considering it the only thing he currently needed to focus on, a top priority. Weapon? Riveria and Gareth nodded simultaneously. Okay. Finn hesitated for a moment. In that case, come with me to Hephaestus Familia. Hephaestus Familia. This was the unparalleled blacksmith familia in Orario. In Orario, there were familias of various types, from exploration-focused ones to those engaged in business activities. Hephaestus Familia fell into the latter category. Their main business was selling various weapons and equipment, and most of the members were advanced blacksmiths, those who had acquired a development ability known as blacksmith. I have a batch of orders to place there. Since you need a good weapon, might as well come with me. Finn extended an invitation to Riesel. Thank you. Riesel nodded heavily. Not long after, the two of them walked out of the office and left Twilight Manor. Chapter 42, Hephaestus Familia. Orario, Northeast Street. This was Orario's proud magic stone production hub, adjacent to the industrial zone's manufacturing sector. Under Finn's guidance, Riesel entered this place. Unlike the Northwest Street, mostly populated by adventurers, pedestrians here were mostly laborers in work uniforms. There was a middle-aged human with strong muscles, carrying equipment. A beastman walked alongside a merchant, engaged in conversation. Several dwarves, robust and muscular, were arguing and shouting. A blacksmith with weapons on his back loudly advertised, seemingly introducing his proud creations. The sound of iron being hammered echoed everywhere, and the metallic scent filled the air. This was an entirely industrial street, with hardly any buildings other than factories, workshops, and forges. Not even a single woman or child could be seen. Walking down such a street, Riesel and Finn, with their vibrant clothes, looked somewhat out of place. Fortunately, both of them were unfazed by such trivial matters. Their strong characters made them appear natural and composed, walking step by step toward the center of the street, undisturbed by the curious and scrutinizing gazes. Before long, they arrived at a particular workshop. It was a plain building. Seemingly not well maintained, the building was covered in coal ash. The sound of iron striking seemed more intense and resonant here than anywhere else. "We're here." Finn stood in front of the workshop and turned his head to Riesel. "Here." Despite some speculation, Riesel couldn't help but be surprised when he realized this building was their destination. The workshop didn't really look like a facility important figures from Hephaestus Familia would use. As a blacksmith Familia specialized in selling equipment, Hephaestus Familia's reputation in Orario and the world rivaled that of Loki Familia. The reason was simple. If Loki Familia was one of the strongest familias in exploration, then Hephaestus Familia was the strongest in smithing. The goddess of this familia was the renowned goddess of smithing, Hephaestus. The familia organized by this goddess not only attracted numerous blacksmiths but also had a comprehensive talent cultivation system. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say Hephaestus Familia was a prestigious school for blacksmiths. With so many skilled blacksmiths gathered, including advanced ones with the ability to possess blacksmith development ability, it was easy to imagine the excellence of the weapons produced by this familia. Back then, Hephaestus Familia had become a premium brand worldwide. Products from this familia enjoyed the highest honor among peers. Any equipment labeled created by Hephaestus Familia immediately gained the admiration of countless people, and its value skyrocketed. In a situation like this, the one who could get Finn to personally show up and commission an order had to be an important figure and higher up of Hephaestus Familia. An important figure from the renowned Hephaestus Familia was staying in a place like this was beyond surprising for Riesel. On the other hand, Finn could only laugh when he saw his reaction. "Don't mind it. Most famous blacksmiths have this kind of personality. They'd rather huddle in a dirty workshop, hammering away at iron, than sit in a fancy office. The one we're looking for stands out among this group," Finn explained while glancing at Riesel's face. "If we arranged to meet somewhere else, who knows when this person would have time. But if it's here, this person will be 100% present." After saying that, he went ahead and pushed open the door. "Let's go. We've already given notice. Since no one came out to greet us, we'll just go in ourselves." Finn entered and led the way. Riesel followed suit and quickly caught up with Finn as they entered a spacious forging workshop. The place was dimly lit, with only a few magic stone lamps shrouded in darkness. Deep inside, a faint red glow emanated from the forge, and the air was thick with the smell of iron. This atmosphere would make most people want to keep their distance. "Tsubaki! Are you there?" Finn shouted towards the forging workshop, seemingly unfazed by the surroundings. "I'm here," a voice responded the next second. With a powerful response, a figure emerged from the forging workshop, bathed in the glow of the forge. Surprisingly, it was a woman. She had a beautiful face, long limbs, black hair, red eyes, and wore an Eastern-style work outfit. Her lower half was clad in bright red hakama, while the upper half was wrapped in white fabric, attracting attention. Her skin was tan, darker than the wheat-colored skin of Tiona and Tioni, and she wore an eye patch on her eye, giving her a unique appearance. This attractive woman welcomed Finn with enthusiasm. "Hey, Finn! It's been ages!" The woman called Tsubaki exclaimed with a grin. "You're still rockin' that youthful charm. Come here, let me hug you." She moved in for a hug, not minding the presence of someone else. "No thanks." Finn avoided her with a nonchalant movement. "Goddess Hephaestus isn't here. Yet, she's not here." Tsubaki pouted. "She's been in a bad mood lately, probably because her friend crashing at her place is a total slacker. She's got loads of resentment for that freeloader. I guess she's too caught up dealing with that mess to bother with us." Finn didn't react to her words, but Riesel, who stood nearby, raised an eyebrow without a trace. Unfortunately, neither of the two noticed this. After chatting for a few moments, they turned to Riesel. Let me introduce her to you. Finn said with a smile, glancing at Riesel. Tsubaki Kalbrand, captain of Hephaestus Familia, a top-tier blacksmith among many in Orario. Plus, she's a level 5 first-class adventurer, with a reputation that's no less impressive than mine. He was about to introduce Riesel when Tsubaki interrupted. Riesel Brynhart, Loki Familia's rookie. A supernova who rose from level 1 to level 4 in just over a month. How could I not know him? Everyone's buzzing about him in Orario, especially the gods. I heard they're all digging for info on him. Even my goddess is keeping tabs. Finally got a chance to meet you. Hello. Riesel nodded to her, maintaining a calm expression without any hint of self-satisfaction. Seems like he's got a calm and serious vibe, hey. Tsubaki said while scratching her head. I can't really deal with this kind of personality, you know. Don't worry, Tsubaki. Finn took the opportunity to tease her. Don't be fooled by his current appearance. Even I would be cautious if this boy loses it. He's not as calm as you think. Oh? Seriously? Tsubaki's eyes lit up, then she burst out laughing. That's awesome. Imagine if everyone had this deathly aura like you old folks, it'd be so dull, you know. She said that while completely disregarding gender differences, wrapping her arms around Riesel's neck. Rookies gotta have that rookie vibe, you know. All that energy, a little wildness, that's what makes them cute. Tsubaki grinned. What if you crash at my spot for a bit? I'll make sure you're all good, hey. Cut it out, Tsubaki. Aren't you just looking for a free laborer to swing that hammer for you? Finn, with no trace of politeness, swatted away her hand on Riesel. Don't mess with the future backbone of our familia. If anything happens to him, be ready for Loki and Riveria to come after you. Ugh, okay, okay. You're no fun. Tsubaki gave in and mumbled. If that goddess of mischief and elf princess are both eyeing him, I'm screwed. Finn shot her a look that said as long as you know, making her raise her hands in surrender, while Riesel, who almost couldn't keep up with the situation, just rubbed his nose awkwardly. But, honestly speaking, her tight embrace felt not bad at all. Quite soft. Wondering what Riesel was thinking, Tsubaki placed her hands on her hips and got down to business. Okay, enough with the jokes. Give me the order. Tsubaki reached out her hand to Finn. You're here for spare weapons and equipment for your Familia expedition, yet. Bulk ordering spare weapons was precisely Finn's goal. While members of Loki Familia had their preferred weapons, they would wear out, and different situations demanded different weapons. Therefore, when going on expeditions, besides medicine, the most essential preparation was spare weapons. Especially useful in group battles, long-range weapons played a crucial role and required significant preparation for effective offense and defense. In light of this, every familia, regardless of which, would order a large quantity of weapons as spares for each expedition. For a big familia like Loki Familia, preparing for an expedition beyond the 50th floor required even more. So, on every expedition, Loki Familia would commission a large order from the forging business Familia, and Hephaestus Familia often took up these orders. It could be said that Loki Familia was a regular customer of Hephaestus Familia, and Tsubaki, as the captain of Hephaestus Familia, had a close relationship with them. Given this background, she naturally understood Finn's purpose in coming today. But today was a bit different. Here's the order. Get it done as quickly as possible. Finn handed a parchment to Tsubaki. Besides this, I also need you to create a weapon for your so-called supernova. Oh. Tsubaki took the parchment without looking at it and instead glanced at Riesel more precisely. She was looking at the sword at his waist. Nice workmanship, but it shows plenty of wear and tear already. Probably been patched up a bunch, yet. The discerning eye of Orario's strongest blacksmith was truly sharp. She accurately assessed the sword's condition with just a glance, all the while grinning. Seems like this third-class equipment doesn't suit its user. Wanna hire me to whip up a new one? Just spill your requirements. Chapter 43, Durndal. Inside the workshop, facing Tsubaki's curious gaze, Riesel didn't hesitate much and immediately stated the requirements he had thought about in advance. I need a sword that is as sturdy as possible, not easily damaged, and preferably with the Durndal attribute. Durndal. As the name suggested, it was an attribute that made weapons indestructible and absolutely resistant to damage. Weapons crafted by advanced blacksmiths with the blacksmith development ability often carried some magic attributes, magic effects, or special attributes like Durndal. It was a relatively rare and advanced special attribute. Ace's sword, Desperate, was an example of first-class equipment with the Durndal attribute. Given her use of aerial, which put a huge strain on weapons and could potentially lead to their destruction, she custom-made her sword to prolong the time she could spend in battle without breaking her sword. With this scenario in mind, Riesel, who was also prone to weapon damage due to possessing aerial, naturally considered a weapon with the Durndal attribute as his first choice. "Wait, you want special equipment with Durndal?" Tsubaki exclaimed with evident enthusiasm. "Looks like it's gonna be quite a big order." Indeed, special equipment with the Durndal attribute, even for Hephaestus Familia, was considered a big order. To put it bluntly, it was expensive as heck. Special equipment with the Durndal attribute was at least second-class equipment, and sometimes even first-class equipment, with a price tag that was definitely not trivial. Speaking frankly, even second-class indestructible equipment could fetch tens of millions of valis, and it was not uncommon for first-class indestructible equipment to sell for hundreds of millions of valis. And this was precisely the problem that gave Riesel a headache. "My budget isn't too generous. If it's too pricey, let's forget about Durndal," Riesel added with a wry smile. This was also why he said preferably rather than insisting on it. With a price tag of at least tens of millions of valis, it was a significant burden for him, who had only been in the adventurer business for a little over a month. Even though since teaming up with Freya, he no longer ignored magic stones and drop items, returning home every day with a full load, he still couldn't accumulate that much wealth in just over a month. Since reaching level 2, Riesel and Freya had explored the middle floors beyond the 13th floor. They earned hundreds of thousands of valis a day, and if they split it, each person got close to 100,000 valis. At that rate of earning money in a month, Riesel had only earned a few million valis, including the 800,000 valis he needed to repay Freya for lending him the money for his current weapon. Fortunately, during the duel with the 17th floor boss Goliath, he not only obtained a large magic stone but also a drop item called Goliath's Skin. The value of a floor boss's drop items was self-evident. Adding to this was the significant earnings from the monster feast encountered on the 16th floor a month ago. After selling all the magic stones and drop items, his savings were barely around 10 million valis. This amount, if used to buy second-class equipment, was just enough. Second-class equipment could be good or bad. The good ones were not much worse than first-class equipment, while the bad ones were just a bit better than third-class equipment. Therefore, the prices for second-class equipment fluctuated greatly, ranging from a few million valis to even a staggering 10 million valis or more for those that were pushed to astronomical prices. Unfortunately, the Durndal attribute fell into the category of special attributes. Most special equipment with Durndal was of high quality and rarely priced below 10 million valis. Riesel, eager for a weapon with the Durndal attribute, found himself constrained by a limited budget. If there was no other option, he would have to settle for Tsubaki forging sturdy second-class equipment. Honestly, it felt like wasting a precious opportunity. The finest blacksmith in Orario was right in front of him, and her creations were undoubtedly top-notch. Any order from this master smith would typically warrant first-class equipment. Riesel was practically asking this renowned blacksmith to create second-class equipment, and it felt like a missed opportunity. But with no money, there was no choice. He accepted reality. If Tsubaki wasn't willing to forge second-class equipment, he would have to look for another blacksmith. If Finn hadn't suggested it, Riesel wouldn't have even considered ordering a weapon from Tsubaki, the strongest blacksmith in Orario. Originally, he intended to wait until Finn settled his order commission for the expedition and then have another blacksmith from Hephaestus Familia take on his own order. However, with Finn's suggestion, he decided to just go for it. Considering Finn's and Loki Familia's reputation, even if Tsubaki wasn't interested in his request, other blacksmiths from the Familia would likely take it up, right? Just as Riesel was lost in thought, Finn suddenly spoke up. "Help him forge the best Durndal attribute weapon, Tsubaki." Finn's unexpected words left Riesel stunned. "Captain." Riesel looked at Finn in surprise. "I know your budget is tight, so this time the Familia will advance the funds for you." Finn smiled at the astonished Riesel. "With your growth speed, it won't be long before even second-class equipment won't keep up with your strength. When that happens, the weapon you just bought will be abandoned, which is a waste of money." As someone who had watched Ace grow, Finn understood the troubles that came with possessing overpowered magic called aerial. Second-class equipment. Special equipment at this level was suitable as the main weapon even for level 5 first-class adventurers. It should have been more than enough for a level 4 like Riesel. However, aerial was an unreasonable magic, not only affecting the user's body but also the weapon. Ace had faced this problem before, eventually spending a considerable amount of money to order a custom weapon with the Durandal attribute. Now that Riesel had gained the same magic, avoiding this issue was crucial. It could be said that a Durandal weapon was the most suitable for the user of aerial. Though its performance was slightly lower than other same-level weapons, the feature of not easily breaking was priceless for Riesel and Ace, who were prone to damaging their weapons. Finn genuinely believed that, with Riesel's growth speed, he would soon become a first-class adventurer. At that time, a weapon that barely met the requirements would once again fall behind his strength, resulting in abandonment. Instead of that, it was better to be prepared early with the best one. The expedition is about to begin, and when the time comes, even if you are not the main force, you'll still be a powerful vanguard. A good weapon is essential to unleash your full potential. It's a good thing for you, for us, and for our familia. Finn patted Riesel's thigh and smiled. Upon hearing that, Riesel fell into silence for a while before finally nodding. I understand. Everything cool. Tsubaki jumped in at the perfect time, shooting a glance over at Riesel. So, am I grabbing this order? Any other request? None. Riesel shook his head, then thought for a moment before adding, if possible, I'd like the sword to be as light as possible. This was, of course, a request made to trigger the lightweight development ability effect. A lighter weapon would enhance the effectiveness of lightweight, amplifying its strengthening effects on his dex and AGI. Therefore, Riesel's only requirements for his weapon were that it should be sturdy and lightweight. He didn't mind sacrificing other advantages as long as these two criteria were met. Even if his weapon's performance wasn't outstanding or its power wasn't strong enough, he could compensate with the enhancement from aerial. Just like how he didn't need armor with the wind protection from aerial, there weren't many attacks that could penetrate and harm him through the armor of wind. Got it. Tsubaki slapped Riesel on the back with a hearty chuckle. I'm gonna forge the sickest sword for you. Just wait until you see how high my sword takes you, and you'll be the hero that blows the minds of all the gods. At the same time, on the 30th floor of Babel, a Denatus was in session. No time for chit-chats. Loki, sitting in her seat, abruptly stood up, propped one foot on the table, and yelled with a menacing expression. The umpteenth Denatus. Let's get this started already. Oh! With her declaration, an astonishing cheer erupted. Taking a closer look, the hall transformed into a temple that occupied the entire floor, and numerous gods were present. In the spacious hall, aside from solemn rows of stone pillars, there was only a large round table in the middle, devoid of anything else. The walls at a distance were entirely made of enormous glass, surrounded by the vast sky of 30 floors. The unusually high ceiling made the whole space incredibly expansive, seemingly endless. Gods from various familias in Orario sat around the large round table one after another, and thanks to Loki's declaration, a tremendous cheer echoed. Here we go. Finally, the day has come. I couldn't wait any longer. So curious. Hey, Loki. Satisfy our curiosity. Yet. Various gods, regardless of gender, joined in the excitement. Their target, naturally, was the main character of this meeting, Loki. Cut the crap. Loki was equally blunt, not mincing words and throwing in a few curses for good measure. Chapter 44, Denatus. Denatus. This was a meeting held only once every 3 months in the Labyrinth City, Orario. Due to the participants being gods, this meeting was revered by the world as Denatus. In reality, it was just a gathering for various gods to alleviate boredom and seek entertainment. Originally, it was merely a gathering of idle gods chatting about trivial matters to pass the time. As more gods joined, the meeting grew in scale. Over time, the nature of the gathering changed, and it became a platform for various gods to share the latest information from the lower world, exchange opinions on operating familia, and even make resolutions that could impact the entire Orario in cooperation with the guild. Thanks to this, whether good or bad, any matter discussed and resolved in Denatus influenced the entire adventurer community and the entire Orario. The reason for Loki's bad mood lies here. After all, nobody knew better than her that in such grandiloquent occasions for eloquence, a god who was more capricious and eager for entertainment and excitement than anyone else would start unpredictable topics. Just like at this moment. Don't be too harsh, Loki. Come on, we just wanna know about that rookie in your familia. Haven't the kids been spreading rumors lately? Did your child really go from level 1 to level 4 in just over a month? What method did he use? Spill the beans. That's right, that's right. Various gods had been anticipating this moment for a long time. Though seated in their respective seats without getting up, their gazes simultaneously converged on Loki's body. They wore expressions of excitement so intense that, on a spiritual level, they surrounded her. Watching these gods reveling in what seemed like a newfound amusement, Loki visibly wore an unpleasant expression. With a child in her own familia making such incredible progress, she was naturally both proud and happy. If it were a different occasion, she wouldn't mind having a few drinks and then boastfully praising Riesel as the darling of the world and the hero of fate, making others envy and admire. But here, if she did that, it would only backfire. These so-called gods, who thirst for the unknown and entertainment, would undoubtedly not mind doing something she least wanted to see when she was at her proudest. Gods were creatures like that. Even a passing thought that arises from a moment's whim could lead to action, disrupting the entire Orario both spiritually and physically. Therefore, Loki's mood was not only very bad but her expression also didn't look good. Why? Isn't it normal for my kid to hit it big? Loki, giving a menacing look, scanned every god and muttered in a deep tone. Are you planning some sneaky moves behind my back? All right then. If you're itching for trouble and death, just bring it on. The notorious and violent side of the infamous evil goddess Loki made many of the excited and muddled-headed gods present shudder, quickly averting their gazes. She was Loki, the goddess of one of the strongest familias in Orario. If they really upset her, once Loki familia starts trouble, even some major familias would inevitably suffer damages and may even be expelled from Orario. Gods couldn't use arcanum in the lower world, but the stronger the familia, the more experts within, and the larger the influence. If it came to conflicts or even wars between familias, few familias in Orario could match Loki familia. Therefore, many gods felt a bit intimidated by Loki. Some gods started to gaze elsewhere and cursed inside their hearts, no longer pressing for answers. Of course, some gods were completely unafraid of her. Don't be so angry, Loki. This is a rare meeting. A voice as melodious as silver bells suddenly echoed in the hall, making various gods reveal intoxicated expressions one after another. Especially the male gods, each sporting an enamored and foolish look. However, when Loki heard that voice, her heart sank. She knew the most troublesome character had just entered. Seated across from her, seemingly in a standoff, was the unmistakably prestigious goddess of beauty, Freya. Freya, hey! Loki had this unpleasant look. Why would a nympho like you even show up here? Ain't you busy with your horny pets? At Loki's insult, Freya only smiled, making the air in the entire hall seem sweeter. It's been too long. I felt a sudden urge to drop by and see what was happening. Freya said with a smile. Of course, I'm also a bit curious about that rookie of yours who's making quite a buzz. Thanks but no thanks. Loki replied ungraciously. Can't the pets you kept satisfy you? Despite Loki's reproach and insult, Freya seemed unfazed. It seems you're quite protective of that child. Freya said with a smile as bright as flowers. How about introducing him to me? TCH. Loki blatantly clicked her tongue in annoyance. Loki and Freya were old acquaintances. Back in heaven before various gods descended to the lower world, the two had dealings with each other. However, saying their relationship was good was difficult. They had cooperated before, appearing close in front of others. They had also been enemies, engaging in a serious battle. Now, both of them had familias regarded as the strongest in Orario, both rivals and enemies. In this situation, Loki knew what the goddess named Freya was up to. Without a doubt, she had her eyes on Riesel. Although not thoroughly, once this nympho goddess laid eyes on him, things could spiral out of control. Are you sure you want to do this, Freya? Loki, rarely revealing her nature as an evil goddess, showed a ferocious expression. Now, the atmosphere in the entire hall seemed to freeze, becoming incredibly oppressive. Various gods instantly closed their mouths. One after another, they lowered their heads, cold sweats breaking out on their foreheads. Especially when they saw Freya's increasingly intense smile, their hearts pounded. This was a genuine conflict of gods. Fight, 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 fight. In such an exciting situation, several gods couldn't help but think like that. This was truly a case of enjoying the show without worrying about the consequences. However, where there were gods, fearing that the world wouldn't be in chaos, there were gods who found such conflicts annoying. Alright, Loki, Freya, this is not the place for your quarrel. Calm down. A goddess spoke with a feeble voice, sitting not far from Loki. She had flaming red hair and a vibrant red dress. The red-haired goddess's beauty was no less than Loki's, and it was comparable even to Freya as the goddess of beauty. However, an eye patch over her right eye somewhat diminished her overall aesthetic. The one-eyed, red-haired goddess's abrupt interruption eased the tension between Loki and Freya. Since even Hephaestus had said so, I guessed I'd have to yield. Freya shrugged her fragrant shoulders. I didn't want my children to miss out on the best equipment in the future. The red-haired goddess was none other than Hephaestus, the goddess of the strongest blacksmith familia in Orario and the legendary goddess of Smith. What, so you're here? Loki grinned at Hephaestus. I heard you're taking care of that poor runt. I thought you wouldn't show up. Don't say that. Hephaestus sighed. I'm even wondering if it would have been better not to help her back then. It's not too late to do that now, you know. Loki smirked. Just kick that poor runt out of your home and let her fend for herself, yet. Surprisingly, Hephaestus was considering it. Not that she was heartless, but the lifestyle of the so-called poor runt from Loki's mouth had fallen to a point where she couldn't bear it. The resolute and hard-working goddess of Smith wouldn't be bothered to this extent otherwise. Should she just throw her friend out for real? Hephaestus began to seriously contemplate the idea. Watching this unfold, Loki's eyes were squinting more as if she were thinking of some underhanded schemes. Unfortunately, there was a more important matter she needed to do. Loki was fully aware that she would be surrounded and forced to endure all her displeasure as she attended this meeting, all for the sake of this matter. Looks like you guys don't have any other matters going on. Loki slapped the table. Since that's the case, let's just start awarding aliases to the kids who've leveled up. Yes, awarding alias. This was one of the segments of the Devastation, a grand event in the lower world. Anyone who leveled up and became a high-class adventurer, whether they were the lowest level 2 or the highest level 7, would have their name mentioned here, and bestowed with a unique alias by various gods. For example, Ace, her alias was Sword Princess. For example, Freya, her alias was Thousand Elf. Originally, Riesel was supposed to receive an alias when he reached level 2. However, the previous Devastation had already occurred before he leveled up to level 2, so it was temporarily put on hold. Until today, over a month later, as Riesel had already reached level 4, the Devastation was officially convened again. It must be said, this was the first time in history. Various gods couldn't help but feel emotional as they thought of Riesel. Back then, Loki Familia's Sword Princess, at the age of 8, reached level 2 in just a year. All the gods at that time found it unbelievable. Her growth speed was already quite bizarre. Forget about Orario, it even shocked the entire world. But now, there was another child with even more bizarre growth. If Riesel weren't from Loki Familia, most gods might have recklessly rushed to get him, no matter what. At this moment, the goddess of the said child acted like a guard dog, baring her teeth at everyone. Let me make it clear, if anyone dares to come up with a messy alias for my kid, don't blame me for getting pissed. Loki threatened, making all the gods present quickly straighten their faces and think seriously. Only Freya, looking at Loki's ferocious appearance, slowly curled her lips. Her expression was beautiful yet chilling. Chapter 45, Alias. Orario, Guild Headquarters. As the dusk approached, heralding the onset of night, the guild headquarters, resembling a grand temple, was bustling with a crowd of people. One after another, people gathered in front of the bulletin board, gazing at the parchment papers affixed to it, immersing themselves in the lively commotion that turned the scene into a bustling market. Numerous parchment papers adorned the bulletin board, but at this very moment, the one capturing the attention of everyone present was the one prominently displayed in the center. It seemed as though even the guild itself was boasting about the achievements and extraordinary nature of this particular parchment. The contents of the parchment were meticulously written. Riesel Brynhart. Affiliation, Loki Familia. Race, human. Age, 17. Profession, adventurer. Current floor, 17th floor. Notable achievement, Riesel Brynhart, an adventurer from Loki Familia, achieved a great feat on the 17th floor by single-handedly defeating a monster Rex, Goliath. This accomplishment, spanning 1 month, marked his official level up to level 4, earning him the alias Trickster Swordsman. Posted on the bulletin board were sheets of parchment, precisely confirmed by the guild and publicly announced adventurers' information. The aliases decided upon in Denatus were now glaringly displayed and laid out for everyone to see. This time, however, people were particularly focused on the most dazzling and intriguing individual among them. As they looked at the parchment posted in the middle of the bulletin board, discussions broke out without hesitation. Yo, is this Riesel Brynhart, that rookie from Loki Familia everyone's been buzzing about? The heck? He's already hit level 4. He took down a floor boss alone? Seriously, is this some kinda joke? But the guild vouched for this info. How could it be fake, dude? So, those rumors from earlier might be true? This dude was just a level 1 a month back. Who's leveling up from level 1 to level 4 in just over a month? Is this for real? The Sword Princess took a whole year for her first level up, but this rookie pulls off multiple levels in just over a month. I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around it, you know. Adventurers, one after another, expressed excitement, skepticism, astonishment, confusion, envy, and disbelief, creating a chaotic atmosphere in the guild hall. The guild staff's loud shouts couldn't even quell the growing commotion. He's here. Until a moment later, with a loud shout from an adventurer near the entrance, the crowd lost their clamor. A young man walked in from outside, heading straight towards the bulletin board. Is that Riesel Brynhart? The Loki Familia rookie? Dude, why are you still calling him a rookie? He's level 4 and got himself an official alias now, you know. As the crowd lowered their voices and involuntarily made way, creating a path, Riesel walked through the cleared path, making his way to the bulletin board where the parchment with his information was posted. Trickster Swordsman. Reading his alias, Riesel muttered it in a speechless tone, and his expression became subtly awkward. Loki called me over all mysteriously, looking all smug, to tell me to check my alias. If someone didn't know, they'd think I received some impressive alias, but this. He couldn't quite figure out how good or bad his alias was. He couldn't even see how he was related to an alias like this. Calling himself a swordsman was fine, as he indeed was one, even possessing the swordsman development ability, there was no dispute there. But where did this trickster come in? His swordsmanship, learned from Ace, was very orthodox. It really had nothing to do with the term trickster. Could it be that the gods perceive him as a schemer employing tricks in his swordsmanship? Riesel was somewhat bewildered with his assumption. However, he knew that this alias was actually not that awful. If his memory served him right, any alias born on this so-called Denatus was likely meant to challenge the shame of the alias receiver, at least 9 out of 10 times. Because the gods had an advanced perspective and a proneness for entertainment, the aliases they bestowed were often considered cool by mortals in this world but would make modern people cringe with embarrassment. Think about Loki, she even threw around a term like humble brag before. It showed God's perspective was ahead of their time. Suppose she hadn't attended the Denatus, restraining various gods from recklessly giving him a cringe alias, he'd probably have been stuck with an alias like Breezeblade Prince or Tempest Sword Emperor by now. In comparison, this trickster swordsman was much better, or rather, tame. Now that I think about it, isn't Loki considered to be the god of mischief or trickery in mythology? Riesel suddenly remembered the legend of Loki in his previous world. Could the trickster in his alias come from there? Perhaps because he was the child of evil goddess Loki, who was skilled in trickery, mischief, and deception, they gave him the alias Trickster Swordsman? Okay. Whatever. Riesel reluctantly accepted this interpretation. Seeing everyone around watching and sizing him up, with some adventurers even eyeing him, ready to approach and say something, he quickly turned away. From the reactions around him, it was clear that only a few truly admired him. Most adventurers regarded him with skepticism and envy, which was expected for a newcomer like him. This was only natural. While others spent several years, even decades, reaching certain levels, he effortlessly reached them in just over a month. It challenged the darker aspects of mortal, which was understandable. Not wanting to attract unnecessary attention or give others a chance to vent, Riesel turned and left, exiting the guild headquarters and turning into a secluded alley, planning to take a shortcut back to Twilight Manor. However, something unexpected happened. Riesel suddenly stopped, furrowing his brow. A feeling of being watched crawled up his spine, sending a slight chill to the back of his neck. Who? Riesel asked, silently stood in place, waiting. Humph. Soon, a cold snort echoed in the dark alley. Riesel abruptly turned around, looking towards a shadow. In that shadow, a figure clad in a black hooded cloak silently appeared. "Are you the trickster swordsman?" The figure's voice, unmistakably male and filled with displeasure and even hatred, emanated from the newcomer, deep and unforgiving. Riesel didn't answer, he only placed his hand on the sword at his waist, staring at the black-cloaked figure. This behavior only intensified the black-cloaked figure's displeasure and hatred. "I asked you a question. Are people from Loki familia like this? Don't they understand basic manners?" Those words and that tone only earned a cold look from Riesel. "Manners are for those who also practice them. Do you think you have any?" Riesel said expressionlessly. "Oh." The black-cloaked figure sneered. "Your mouth is sharp, but I wonder if your sword is the same." With that, the black-cloaked figure raised a hand. Swish! 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 In an instant, several black blurs leaped down from the walls in all directions, surrounding Riesel. They also wore black hooded cloaks with their faces obscured. Swing! Seeing this, Riesel immediately unsheathed his sword. Except for the first black-cloaked figure, who seemed to be their leader, the rest of the black-cloaked figures one after another drew weapons from under their cloaks and charged toward him, launching an assault without hesitation. For a moment, various weapons such as daggers, spears, swords, and halberds were raised or swung down by them from different angles, leaving no opening for Riesel to evade and forcing him to defend. The all-encompassing attack left him with no room, making it nearly impossible to find space to dodge, and could only choose to parry. This also told him that these attackers were not just a random group. Judging by their coordinated attacks, these people must have fought together for several years and developed good teamwork. Their strength was also impressive, definitely not ordinary adventurers. Level 2 third-class adventurer. No. These people are at least level 3 second-class adventurers or even more. As that thought flashed through his mind, Riesel took action. Whoosh! Accompanied by the whistling sound of the wind, his figure blurred, rushing with lightning speed towards one of the attackers who hadn't closed in yet. His sword turned into a silver flash, ruthlessly slashing out. Clang! The attacker was shocked, hastily raising their weapon to block the incoming strike, but was pushed back by the tremendous impact. Unperturbed, Riesel accelerated again, leaving the previously repelled attacker behind and charging towards another. Clang! Cling! Clang! Cling! Soon, metal collision sounds mixed together. Riesel, moving like the wind, flickered back and forth. His slender sword slashed out repeatedly, allowing the blade of his sword to cut through several attackers in quick succession. Complex as it may seem, the entire process took less than 2 seconds. Within those 2 seconds, Riesel, with his astonishing speed and swordsmanship, not only disrupted their coordination but also forced them all to retreat. What? Very strong. Are you fucking kidding me? Is he really level 4? The attackers were astonished one after another. Even the leader of these attackers, who had been watching while leaning against a wall with crossed arms, had contracted pupils and clicked his tongue in annoyance. Damn this guy! Is he really a freshly level 4? Riesel was clearly a level 4 that could easily rival the top tier ones. Among the attackers surrounding him, there were also several level 4. Yet, after working together, they were still forcefully repelled by him in a single exchange. Continue. I want to see how much skill this guy really has. The leader expressed his annoyance. At their leader's words, the attackers suppressed their doubts and once again rushed toward Riesel. Watching this, a cold glint appeared in Riesel's eyes. Chapter 46, Grudge. Thud. In the dim depths of the alley, the sound of a falling body emerged, announcing the conclusion of a battle. Each attacker, clad in a black cloak, lay on the ground without exception. Some lost consciousness, others lay there wailing, their bodies stained with blood. Around their bodies, whether on the ground or the walls, sword marks were engraved. Riesel stood among these fallen attackers with his sword dripping with blood. His expression was stern, resembling a ruthless executioner. The scene triggered various shifts in the gaze of the leader of these black-cloaked attackers, who leaned against a wall in the shadow. However, from start to finish, this black-cloaked leader didn't make a move and didn't intervene in the fight at all. What a good skill and temperament! The leader blurted out, praising Riesel, but the tone carried a piercing sarcasm. Someone like you doesn't seem to be from the loving Loki familia but rather more like one of us. Witnessing Riesel's fight, the leader began to acknowledge him to some extent. Although Riesel had just leveled up to level 4, his skills and combat techniques far exceeded the average level 4. In one-on-many situations, he could effortlessly crush a group of adventurers with the same level. This strength truly made people take notice. The thing that surprised the leader was Riesel's speed, nearly rivaling a first-class adventurer specialized in AGI. With outstanding speed and remarkable swordsmanship, Riesel could easily maneuver through the group's attacks, systematically defeating each attacker without trouble. The result was the successful defeat of the attackers, while Riesel himself remained unscathed. He didn't even break a sweat or breathe heavily, leading the leader to conclude that he undoubtedly possessed healing power development ability and at a very high rank at that. Just leveled up to level 4, but already had such capabilities. Even the leader couldn't help but admit that Riesel, even though irritating, was indeed special. However, there was still something irritating about Riesel that made the leader couldn't shake that particular feeling. As a result, the leader's tone remained unpleasant. "You might as well switch sides," the leader sarcastically remarked. "If you come to our side, I could rightfully beat you into shape." At those words, Riesel's expression remained unchanged. He just stared at the black-cloaked leader silently, and after a while, spoke up. "Vanna Freya." As that name came out, the black-cloaked leader's face hidden under the hood froze. Riesel keenly sensed the change in the atmosphere around the leader and instantly understood that his guess was correct. Alan Frummel, level 6, Freya Familia's vice-captain, Orario's fastest, bearer of the alias Vanna Freya. Riesel calmly revealed the identity of the black-cloaked leader. "It's really you, hey?" As his words fell, the leader fell silent for a moment, and soon a faint murderous aura began to emanate from him. The black-cloaked leader, or rather, Alan Frummel, stepped forward, removing the black cloak from his body and revealing his true face. It was a young catman, somewhat short and small in stature, but with sharp eyes and expressions. "How did you figure out it was me?" The renowned Vanna Freya shot Riesel a sharp look. However, Riesel remained unshaken. "All those who attacked me were at least level 3, and there were even several level 4. Yet, it was clear they were following your orders. So, your strength is likely above these people. To command experts with level 3 and level 4, the possibility of being a level 5 or higher is very high. In Orario, there aren't too many familias that can have a first-class adventurer. At most, there are only a handful. Considering all this, there's only one familia left that dares to attack members of Loki familia so brazenly, and that's yours. With this in mind, isn't the answer obvious? Other than your Freya familia, who else could pull off something like this?" Riesel calmly explained with a tranquil expression. As for why he could guess Alan's identity, it was even simpler. A first-class adventurer from Freya familia, with such a foul mouth, who else but you, Vanna Freya? This deduction was based on his knowledge of the original work. After all, he had never seen Alan or heard any rumors about him after he arrived in this world. But Alan was unaware of this. Riesel's analysis, as it reached his ears, only led him to think that perhaps some rumors about him had reached Riesel's ears, allowing Riesel to guess his identity. In fact, foul-mouthed rumors about him were not uncommon. Anyone familiar with Loki familia and Freya familia would know that in these two familias, there was a level 5 Vanargand Betloga, known for his foul mouth, and a level 6 Vanna Freya Alan Frummel, who was equally notorious for his sharp tongue. Both of them were first-class adventurers specializing in AGI, often being compared by gods and adventurers alike, leading to a deep-seated animosity between Bet and Alan. Of course, all of this was irrelevant now, since, at this moment, Alan was only furious about his identity being exposed and Riesel indirectly insulting him for having a foul mouth. "Bold of you to say those words right in front of me," Alan remarked with an overflowing murderous aura. "Just a mere level 4, do you think you can fight me?" With those words, he vanished. His figure completely merged into the darkness, moving at a speed akin to a war chariot charging forward. Whoosh! Carrying a howling momentum, he blinked and appeared in front of Riesel in an instant. In his hand was a splendid spear, its elegance accentuated as it sliced through the air like lightning, thrust towards Riesel. Swish! At that moment, time seemed to come to a halt. Against someone who was a level 6 and dubbed as the city's fastest, Riesel couldn't react in time. Dodging? Not possible. Counterattacking? Not possible. Blocking? Not possible. Not possible. Not possible. Not possible. Every possible method proved futile. Feeling the imminent danger, Riesel made a seemingly reckless move without hesitation. He advanced instead of retreating. Pucci. Accompanied by the sound of flesh tearing, the spear pierced through Riesel's shoulder, emerging from his back. What? Alan was shocked by the scene. He hadn't expected Riesel to take such a reckless action. If Riesel hadn't advanced, he had only intended to pierce through Riesel's shoulder, causing some flesh wounds at most. However, Riesel willingly stepped forward, offering his entire shoulder, allowing the sharp long spear to penetrate through his back. In a flash of blood, Alan's pupils contracted, losing that split second of reaction, and in that split second, a tempest swept through. Tempest. A low voice, as if from hell, resounded clearly in the alley. Ignoring his pierced shoulder, Riesel awakened the power of Ariel and concentrated all the wind force onto his sword's edge. He swung it down towards the visibly alarmed Alan with all his might. Tch. Alan's expression changed rapidly as he uttered a surprised sound. He instinctively unleashed the speed that made him the best in Orario, attempting to retreat. However, Riesel's empty hand tightly gripped the spear piercing his shoulder, leaving Alan with no room to retreat. Pucci. The sound of tearing echoed once again. In the burst of blood, the catman abandoned his spear, narrowly avoiding the extremely fast slash imbued with wind force, escaping the fate of having his head severed on the spot. Yet, Alan was a step too slow. A large gash was cut open directly in front of him, blood staining the dark alley. "Why, you bastard!" Alan clutched his wound, glaring at Riesel with intense anger. "Ugh!" Riesel pulled out the spear embedded in his shoulder and tossed it aside, meeting Alan's furious gaze with a calm gaze. Blood flowed profusely from his shoulder, yet he seemed indifferent, his face pale as he looked up at Alan. "A mere level 4, so what?" Riesel sneered. "You level 6 isn't that impressive though. Son of a bitch." Alan was so enraged that he lost his composure. The murderous aura emanating from his body intensified, surpassing its previous intensity by an unknown factor. The city's fastest adventurer was truly provoked. Faced with this enraged Alan, Riesel remained calm and composed, his expression unchanged. Only his eyes revealed an icy coldness, as if at absolute zero. That coldness, like a bucket of cold water, not only extinguished the flames of anger in Alan's heart but also sent shivers down his spine. Instinct told him that if he went all out again and charged forward, Riesel would absolutely risk and do everything to cut off his head no matter what. Even if the opponent was a level 6 first-class adventurer, if Riesel abandoned defense and engaged in a life-and-death battle without regard for his own safety, the probability of Riesel's sword landing on his head would be no less than 70%. Realizing this, Alan's face contorted. "Damn lunatic!" Alan cursed. He didn't want to play a life-for-a-life game with this human in this boring task. "I'll remember you, Riesel Brynhart." He stared at Riesel intensely for a while as if trying to memorize every detail of his appearance. After a while, he leaped up, landing on the roof of a building and disappearing from sight. Riesel watched Alan's disappearing figure quietly until complete silence enveloped the surroundings. Only then did he clutch his shoulder and kneel down on one knee, unable to endure the pain. Crack! The wind dissipated, and a crack appeared on his sword. Glancing at the crack on the sword and feeling the intense pain in his shoulder, Riesel murmured after a while. "Freya, hey!" The image of the goddess of beauty flashed in his mind as he silently licked his own blood. "I'll remember this grudge." Chapter 47, A Hole. Strange. A perplexed murmur echoed softly inside an opulent room, a corner where no one could hear it. Freya stood by the window, her beautiful eyes wide open, gazing at a corner of the city, filled with confusion in her eyes. She had witnessed the confrontation between Riesel and Alan, or rather, through some special means, in a manner close to clairvoyance, she observed the process of Riesel and Alan's clash. This was a skill only she could master, beyond the reach of the other gods. Therefore, even though the place where they clashed was at a considerable distance from her place, she could still see what was happening. But precisely because of this, she was both amazed and puzzled. "The first time I've seen a soul like that." Freya's beautiful brows tightly furrowed as she murmured. The goddess of beauty, Freya, possessed a pair of unique eyes. They were called the discerning eye, capable of seeing the essence of the souls of those in the lower world. These were eyes one was born with, not falling under the category of arcanum, which was prohibited for use in the lower world. It was an innate skill, a trait that was practically useless in heaven. However, in the lower world, with this pair of eyes, she could perceive the potential of mortals more keenly than any other god. As long as she could observe the souls of these mortals, she could judge one's potential based on the brilliance of their soul. After all, any hero, anyone wielding the power of a hero, would have a soul that shone brilliantly. It was impossible to be as ordinary as a commoner. In heaven, she used this ability to grasp the colors of the souls of those ascending to heaven, the deceased, selecting favored individuals as her own collectibles and embracing them in her arms. These so-called collectibles were what mortals called heroes. Therefore, it was not strange for Freya Familia to become one of the strongest familias in Orario, on par with Loki Familia, and even surpassing them in some aspects. The reason was that the goddess of this familia could recruit children with extraordinary potential ahead of other gods, gradually making her familia stronger. Freya also had a deep affection for children with extraordinary soul brilliance. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that she loved such children deeply. In light of this, after Riesel displayed exceptional potential, she immediately set her sights on him. However, his soul made the goddess of beauty, who could see through the soul of every mortal, full of astonishment and suspicion. It's not the dazzling brilliance or the extraordinary colors, but the difference in shape. The soul seen by her discerning eye right now was such an unprecedented thing. In the past, the souls of those in the lower world, when viewed through her eyes, either had different colors or emitted varying degrees of brilliance. Based on the display of color and brilliance, she chose whether to add them to her collection based on her preferences. Up to now, she had seen various souls of heroes displaying different colors and brilliance. Some had unique colors. Some radiated brilliant and dazzling light. All of these were things she liked and loved. But Riesel was different. In her discerning eye, his soul had neither extraordinary colors nor brilliant radiance, only twisting like a vortex. No, it wasn't a vortex. It was a hole. A colorless, brilliantless, completely unclear shape, twisting like a black hole, as if it could engulf everything, ferment, blend, and mix inside. This hole seemed to be telling her not to expect or see what was inside or casually judge its value, blocking her line of sight completely. From that hole, all she could see or feel was only one emotion. That was the obsession not to accept interference from anyone. That was the unwillingness to be scrutinized and judged by anyone. That was the essence of Riesel's soul. He was rejecting those who were reaching out to him, silently indicating to them that his future could only be decided and chosen by himself. Indeed, it was a kind of obsession. If one's existence could be observed and scrutinized casually by others, their future from that moment would have been fixed, confined within the range of what others saw. Riesel would not accept such a future. Phew, very interesting. After the initial surprise, Freya became intrigued. Unwilling to be seen by me, goddess, unwilling to be judged by anyone, world, persistently and twistedly advancing, what kind of existence do you really want to become? Suddenly, she developed a burning desire. A desire to see what was brewing inside that hole. Phew. So that's how it is. This is the unknown that various gods have been pursuing all along. Phew. Freya chuckled. Her laughter was captivating, enough to conquer nations. It was a laughter of unparalleled beauty. Looks like I'm really going to have a confrontation with Loki this time. Freya mused. Even I, just thinking about getting involved with her, can't help but feel a bit scared. It was not without reason. Loki was the goddess of mischief who once triggered doomsday in heaven, deceived and tricked various gods several times, causing them to turn against each other, nearly unleashing a true calamity. Even Freya, at the thought of clashing with this evil goddess, couldn't help but have reservations. But then again, it's a kind of fun. Let's take it slow. After all, I'm not in a hurry. Freya smiled and walked away. She still had to go check on her little cat, Alan, who got accidentally injured due to her own mischievous sense of humor. At this moment, night had completely fallen. Riesel, covered in bloodstains, took advantage of the night and walked into Twilight Manor, under the doubtful gazes of the gatekeepers. He had intended not to attract anyone's attention and go straight to his room, but unfortunately, he wasn't able to do so. Riesel. Accompanied by a surprised voice, someone had returned to Familia shortly after him. Riesel stopped, feeling somewhat helpless. What happened to you? A swordswoman with dazzling golden hair, fully armed, returned from outside and coincidentally met him as he was about to enter the manor. Seeing his blood-stained appearance, her transparent golden eyes were filled with surprise and seriousness. Although Riesel felt helpless, he turned to face Ace. Ace, did you go to the dungeon? Riesel asked calmly as he assessed the fully armed Ace. Ace nodded. After you went out with Captain, I went to the dungeon. She was still so diligent and progressive, obviously affected by him. Then you have to be careful. Riesel smiled slightly. If Riveria finds out, you're in trouble. At his words, Ace couldn't help but shrink her head. She was most afraid of Riveria, who was like a mother figure, always accompanying her, guarding her growth, and taking care of her. Riveria had scolded her many times for not resting properly after an expedition and for excessively diving into the dungeon. Her progress was good and her effort was also commendable, but Ace's amount of effort far exceeded others. There was a concern that she might overwork herself to the point of exhaustion. In a sense, Ace and Riesel were indeed similar. Both were someone willing to risk everything, including their lives, to become stronger as quickly as possible, seizing every opportunity for growth. From Riesel's usual recklessness, it was apparent that Ace's degree of recklessness was no less. However, there were some differences between them. Riesel had self-awareness and insisted on following his own path, regardless of how others perceived him. Meanwhile, Ace was still a bit hesitant and timid, always afraid of being lectured by Riveria. Don't change the subject. Ace ignored his words and stared at him with a serious expression. Are you injured? I guess so. Riesel pursed his lips. Just a minor injury though, already healed. A wound that could be healed with elixir should be considered minor in his perspective. You're lying. Ace mercilessly exposed his lie. Your complexion is terrible, clearly, you've been seriously hurt. That was where his flaw lies. While a potion could stop bleeding and heal injuries, it couldn't easily conceal the paleness caused by a significant loss of blood. Ace was precisely concerned about that. She couldn't fathom how, with Riesel's current strength, he ended up seriously injured. If he followed the usual routine of entering the dungeon and defeating monsters, it wouldn't have led to this. Unless he delved into the deeper floors below the 37th floor or encountered an irregular. However, returning on the same day from the deeper floors below the 37th floor was impossible. If an irregular appeared, it would be reported to the guild immediately and spread among adventurers, but she hadn't heard any such news. In a nutshell. You fought someone. Ace whispered. A powerful one. Riesel fell silent, then pondered. This girl, all cool and aloof, is actually pretty intelligent. Seeing her intense stare, he could only nod and answer. Don't tell anyone, I want to solve it myself. Ace remained silent for a while, but eventually, nodded her head in agreement. Okay. However, from her hesitant eyes, he could tell that she was somewhat conflicted and uneasy. Ace, seemingly cold but inexperienced, clearly didn't know how to handle the current situation. Observing her behavior, Riesel unconsciously extended his hand and gave Ace a head pat. She froze, involuntarily raising her head to look at him. Meeting her eyes, he only smiled. Don't worry. I'm not one to take a loss easily. Upon hearing his confident words, Ace lowered her head in silence. Her face, partially obscured by her bangs, turned slightly red. Chapter 48, The Busy Familia. In the following period, members of the Loki Familia were surprised to find that Riesel, who was already an early riser and dedicated to dungeon exploration every day, became even more diligent than before. Due to the upcoming expedition, Loki Familia was now extremely busy. Even the executives were ordered not to enter the dungeon and instead stay at the manor, helping with the preparation for the expedition. Freya was also asked by Riveria to stay behind and assist. This left Riesel once again as a lone wolf. Initially, everyone thought he would stay in the Familia to help prepare supplies for the upcoming expedition. However, after Freya was left behind and Riesel became a solo adventurer again, he worked even harder. He would often leave before dawn and return only late at night, appearing weary and dust-covered, as if he had traveled a great distance. Oddly enough, the higher UPS in the Familia, upon learning of this, chose to ignore his act without any objection. Why can't we go, while Riesel can head to the dungeon without pitching in for the expedition preparation? Tiona protested to Finn. Before Finn could respond, Tioni approached and quickly restrained Tiona. Don't question Captain's decisions. The elder sister of the Amazonas twins wore a fierce expression, nearly intimidating Freya, who happened to be present. The expedition is imminent. Even if we let you go to the dungeon for this short period, you won't gain much growth, will you? Gareth bluntly shuts down Tiona with a lack of patience. The implication was clear: rather than wasting this time to strive for minimal growth, it was better to stay in the familia, recuperate, and at the same time handle some expedition-related tasks. However, Riesel was an exception. For us, the progress during this short period is indeed minimal, but it's different for him. Riveria added, leaving Tiona speechless. The executives finally understood why the rest of the familia had been assigned tasks by the higher UPS while Riesel had not. Preparing expedition supplies, whether there was one more or one less person involved, didn't matter. It was better to let Riesel continue to explore the dungeon, utilizing his extraordinary growth speed to the fullest. This way, he could confidently face his first expedition as an adventurer with an even stronger stance. Focus more on the upcoming expedition, all of you. Finn said confidently, observing the silence that had fallen over everyone. Only through expeditions can we delve into deeper floors, face more challenging monsters, and defeat stronger enemies. That was the true path to accelerated growth for them. Without expeditions, the most they could explore would be the middle to lower floors, where the monsters were relatively weak compared to first-class adventurers like them. Killing these weak monsters, no matter how many, would provide little growth. Rather than dwelling on minimal growth, it was more effective to shift their focus to the upcoming expedition and make thorough preparations. This was the most efficient way for level 5 and above to grow. Of course. Though it's a different story for that boy. Gareth muttered, casting a sense of melancholy that plunged everyone into deeper silence. It was only at this moment that everyone realized something. Riesel, who only explored up to the 17th floor, after this expedition, what kind of growth would he achieve upon reaching deeper floors? With only reaching up to the 17th floor, he managed to level up from level 1 to level 4 in just over a month. So, upon entering floors deeper than the 17th, how much Excelia would he gain? Not to mention, a single expedition, a round trip alone taking more than a week, and adding the time needed for exploration, it could easily exceed half a month. With at least a half-month expedition, how would his body, which leveled up several times in just over a month, change? Perhaps, after this expedition, Riesel will be just like you all. Riveria threw out those words to the group of level 5 executives and remained silent thereafter. However, just these words alone instantly created tremendous pressure in the hearts of every executive. No way, right? Tiona wailed. Is he going to be level 5 after returning from this expedition? Is he trying to kill us? He really is a freak. Tioni also had no words. It seems being caught up is only a matter of time. We might as well lie flat. I'm already lying flat though. Lefia murmured silently as she heard Tioni's words. As a witness to Riesel's growth, Lefia transitioned from admiration in the beginning to diligent efforts in the middle. But later on, she decided to lie flat when he officially reached level 4, surpassing her in all aspects. It was not because she didn't want to work hard or pursue him, she simply couldn't catch up at all. She watched Riesel step by step to reach his current level with her own eyes. Her understanding and admiration for his desperate efforts, as well as his repeated help and rescue, made her start to question life. Now, she admired and idolized him even more, and there were fewer feelings of unwillingness. After all, Mr. Riesel and Miss Ace are becoming more and more alike. Lefia blushed unnaturally, stealing a glance towards the corner of the room. There, Ace sat alone, hugging her knees, staring blankly at everyone, lost in thought. While outside the door, Bet, who had just been about to protest upon hearing the words of the 3 top executives, silently turned away upon witnessing the outcome of Tiona's protest. All these scenes were observed by Loki with interest. Kukiku, there's going to be some fun. Whether taking pleasure in other people's misfortune or for some other reason, Loki silently giggled while leaning against the window, watching her busy children coming in and out of the manor. Time passed quickly. As each day went by, Loki Familia started transporting boxes of supplies from various places in Orario back to their base. Among these supplies were pre-ordered spare weapons, various items and tools that could come in handy for special occasions, and potions packaged in crates, containing all kinds of recovery items. Some members were busy with various tasks, while others, during their rest periods, collectively headed to Loki's divine room, forming a long line in front of it. All of this was in preparation for the upcoming expedition, a final round of status updates before venturing into the dungeon. In places like the dungeon, adventurers wouldn't be able to update their statuses anymore. At this time, it was crucial to make the most of it and enhance their strength whenever possible. Due to this, Loki hadn't left the divine room in a while, and her faint shouts of complaint could be heard from within. "Can I even get a break?" Although Loki was both frustrated and helpless, she was doing the only thing she could to help her children improve their strength and increase their chances of survival inside the dungeon. Riesel, watching the long line in front of the divine room, also understood that she was likely busy during this period. "Well, let's just wait then." He thought for a moment and decided to give up on finding Loki for a status update. After all, Excelia wouldn't disappear. Even if there were no status updates, it would accumulate over time. There was no need to rush. Since the seniors of the Familia had allowed him to explore the dungeon on his own when everyone was busy with the expedition preparation, he didn't want to compete with them over who could update their status first, especially when it would happen sooner or later. As a result, everyone in the Familia had their own tasks, and Riesel also had his. Both sides seemed to have reached an unspoken agreement, not interfering with each other, quietly anticipating the day of the expedition. Until one day, as Riesel prepared to head to the dungeon, he received a summon from Finn. "Your weapon is ready," Finn informed with a smile. Hearing that, Riesel's eyes instantly lit up. Northeast Street, Tsubaki's workshop. Riesel and Finn, just like the last time, walked hand in hand, once again visiting this place. As soon as they entered, Riesel spotted Tsubaki. "Finally, you're here." Tsubaki greeted him with a refreshing smile as she walked through the door. Without any unnecessary words, she gestured directly to the side. "Come take a look at your sword." Upon hearing this, Riesel glanced at Finn for a moment. "Go ahead." Finn, with a smile on his face, nodded at him, indicating for him to go forward. Only then did Riesel approach and stand next to Tsubaki. There, a long box containing a weapon was casually placed on the table. The box was open, so he almost instantly saw the content inside. It was a sword with a slender shape and an overall somewhat dark silver-grey color. The sword's edge was thin, almost transparent like crystal. At first glance, it didn't appear to be a weapon designed for killing. Instead, it reminded him of the short sword he had obtained from Loki when he first joined the Familia, a piece of beautiful art specifically meant for collection. At this moment, Tsubaki's slightly satisfied voice sounded, entering his ears. "I whipped up this weapon using orichalcum as the main material, threw in some mithril, and imbued it with the tooth of wind beast. It took me 7 days, but I finally created this beauty." Orichalcum was an extremely precious and rare metal, also known as adamantite, universally recognized as the world's hardest metal. Weapons with the Durandal attribute were primarily made from this metal. Mithril was a refined metal with excellent magic conductivity, favored by most adventurers skilled in magic as the main weapon material. As for the wind beast, it was a rare species that appeared on the 40th floor of the dungeon, known for its strange speed. It was a monster with a relatively low classification level but extremely difficult to defeat. Each of these 3 materials was extremely expensive and rare. Ordinary adventurers might never encounter one of them in their entire life, let alone acquire them. Yet, Tsubaki had used all 3 to forge this sword. "Now, this baby is yours." Listening to her satisfied voice, Riesel's eyes focused on the sword in front of him, slightly gleaming with excitement. Chapter 49, Fool and Hermit. Whoosh! A silver arc flashed through the dim workshop, cutting the atmosphere in half with a chilly gust. Riesel took a dark silver sword into his palm, gripping this gorgeously forged weapon like a work of art. With just a gentle swing, his expression revealed surprise. So light! Despite being a sword crafted with precious metals and refined materials, he felt as though he were holding a feather weightless. In theory, a sword this light would likely lack significant power. However, this sword seemed to defy that expectation. The thin blade edge was incredibly sharp, effortlessly slicing through the air. "How's that?" "Not bad, yet." Tsubaki looked at his surprised expression with a hint of pride on her face. "Because you said you wanted it as light as possible, I threw in a wind beast's tooth and mithril, combining 3 rare materials to forge it. Ordinary master blacksmiths couldn't pull off something like this, you know. If one wanted to forge equipment with the Durandal attribute, using orichalcum as the main material alone was enough. Orichalcum, as the hardest metal, was designed for creating equipment with the Durandal attribute and served as their primary material. Using only one main material for forging would undoubtedly make the process easier. However, for Riesel, Tsubaki unexpectedly added 2 more precious materials. Wind Beast's tooth lightens the weapon without messing with its sharpness or toughness. Mithril, on the other hand, enhances the sword's magical energy conductivity. I heard from Finn that you excel in wind element enchant magic and can enhance your weapon with it, so I figured why not toss in some mithril. In this way, this sword's got crazy sharpness and endurance, excellent magical energy conductivity, while also lightweight. Of course, the most crucial aspect is that it doesn't interfere with Durandal. As Tsubaki explained, she grew more excited and proud, eventually bursting into laughter. For this sword, I've gone without sleep for several days, sparing no effort. Among all the equipment I've forged, this one's easily in the top 3, if not my most proud creation. For Orario's strongest blacksmith to be this proud, the quality of the sword could be easily imagined. The quality of this sword should surpass even Ace's desperate. Finn, after observing the sword for a while, said with a serious expression. Ace's desperate, despite being first class, fell slightly behind other first-class equipment due to its focus on endurance and its affinity with the Durandal attribute. Riesel's sword, on the other hand, was different. While it also focused on endurance and the Durandal attribute, as top-notch first-class equipment, even if its performance and power did not reach the highest, it still ranked among the best in first-class equipment. Adding to its extremely low weight, which allowed lightweight to be pushed to its limits, and its excellent magical energy conductivity, which could make aerial usage smoother and more powerful, such a top-tier weapon already surpassed Ace's desperate in every aspect. No wonder creating this weapon took Orario's strongest blacksmith, Tsubaki, an exhausting 7 days. Considering its overall excellence, it was not strange for her to claim it could rank in the top 3 among her creations and even say it was her proudest creation. Without a doubt, it was the perfect weapon for Riesel. Tsubaki kept her promise and forged the best sword for him. Oh right, got something for you too. Tsubaki remembered something, darted into the forging workshop, and emerged with another weapon. It was a short sword. Upon your request, I forged this secondary weapon for you. It's not as complicated as it's crafted mainly from orichalcum, a pure Durandal attribute weapon and second-class equipment. It's kinda basic compared to other second-class equipment, like a lesser version of Sword Princess's Desperate. Tsubaki's attitude towards this weapon seemed somewhat indifferent as she tossed it to him casually. Riesel weighed the short sword and found it to be heavier than the main weapon. As for its appearance, unlike the glamorous main weapon, it was a simple, bright silver color. Yet, as a secondary weapon, it was considered decent. Okay, I've completed the order as promised. Tsubaki glanced at his face. Now, it's up to you to give them names. Hearing her words, Riesel was slightly surprised. Didn't you say it was your proudest work? Finn asked strangely. Why don't you name it yourself? Nah, forget it. Tsubaki shook her head. This sword is custom-made for your monster rookie here, you know? Apart from him, I bet there's no one else in all of Orario more suited to wield it and unleash its full potential. Perhaps Ace, who also possessed aerial, was suitable for this sword. However, she lacked lightweight. Using such a light sword all the time wouldn't have made much sense for her. Therefore, the true power and performance of this sword could only be brought out by Riesel. It feels like this sword was born solely through my hands and passed it on to you. Tsubaki scratched her head, seemingly helpless while spreading her hands. Given that, it's on you to give it a name, no. With her saying so, Riesel naturally had no reason to refuse. Name, hey. Riesel fell into contemplation. Various thoughts flashed through his mind, eventually settling on his most powerful skill, Fool's Obsession. Well then. Let's go with Fool. He made up his mind. His persistence and his desire, if they were truly just a fool's obsession, then let himself, this fool, foolishly go to the end. Fool, hey. Tsubaki pondered, then nodded. What about the secondary one? Without much thought, Riesel decided. Let's call it Hermit. Fool and Hermit. Riesel's main and secondary weapons finally found their place. Thank you, Tsubaki. Finn approached as matters were settled. Oh, no problem, I had a blast too. Tsubaki chuckled. Forging weapons for a rookie who's breaking Sword Princess's records, getting called as a monster even by gods, it's a win-win for me too, you know. For adventurers, if they gained fame, their weapons would often become famous as well. Therefore, blacksmiths preferred forging weapons for adventurers with potential and strength. If the adventurer gained significant fame, the creations of those blacksmiths would also attract attention. This was the main approach to attract customers and the best way for a blacksmith to become famous. In this situation, Tsubaki naturally had no objections to forging weapons for Riesel. In fact, she was more than happy to do so. After all, he seemed destined for greatness, a future hero known throughout the world. As long as he could make a name for himself, even leave a mark in history, she would be riding on his success. If your monster rookie becomes a hero remembered for generations, his sword might end up in a museum. By then, my name as a blacksmith would truly go down in history. Tsubaki hugged Riesel's neck and patted his back while laughing. Don't disappoint me, okay? Listening to her words and laugh, Riesel smiled in response. I'll do my best. Afterward, he stored away his 2 new swords, one long and one short. Riesel's weapon problem finally found its solution at Tsubaki's place. With 2 special weapons featuring the Durandal attribute, he would no longer need to worry about his weapons getting damaged in battles. Finn also confirmed the backup weapons order for the expedition with Tsubaki. Once they had discussed and agreed upon delivery for the following day, Finn and Riesel set off for home. It was worth mentioning that, based on the price provided by Tsubaki, Riesel learned the pricing for his main and secondary weapons, totaling 180 million valis. Yes, 180 million. This left him silent for a long time. It wasn't until the journey home that he expressed his gratitude to Finn. 180 million valis was definitely a price he couldn't afford at this moment. If it weren't for the Familia's support, he would at most plan to get a main weapon at the level of Hermit. As for Fool, with his current fund, it was definitely out of his reach. The debt he owed to the Familia was indeed quite significant. Finn, however, shrugged it off with a carefree smile. As long as it helps you. Finn spoke while looking directly at his face. Though mentioning this might add some pressure, we do have high expectations for you. We hope you can take our Familia to greater heights, reaching places that even we haven't stepped into. Just keep pushing forward, and we'll handle the rest for you. Don't let us down, okay? Every word of Finn was deeply etched in his mind. In response, Riesel nodded with a solemn expression. Everything was understood without the need for more words. In the blink of an eye, several days had passed. On this day, Twilight Manor was unusually quiet. All the members seemed to be silently gathering their strength, preparing for something. Each one was fully armed and assembled at the entrance of the manor. Riesel also had prepared early in the morning. He didn't wear any armor, only a battle suit for easy movement. Draped in a dust-resistant cloak and armed with 2 swords, he walked out of his room. Before leaving, he paid a visit to Loki's divine room. When he came out, he had an additional piece of parchment in his hands. Riesel Brynhart. Level 4. STR, I0A847. End, I0A825. Dex, I0S969. AGI, I0S971. Mag, I0S933. Lightweight, H. Swordsman, H. Mage, I. Looking at the content on the parchment, Riesel quickly smiled. Shortly afterward, he crumpled the parchment containing his latest status and headed towards the manor's entrance gate. Chapter 50, Looking Forward to the Future. Twilight Manor, Front Yard. Familia members gathered in this place, busy moving things in and out of the manor's entrance gate, creating a constant flow of people. Large cargo boxes filled with supplies were placed on carts, and the 3 top executives directed everyone for the final inspection of items. Even several executives joined in to organize tents and other supplies. Tiona, however, stealthily snacked on some emergency rations, getting caught by Bet and Tioni, resulting in a barrage of scolding. Everyone had their respective tasks at hand. Even Lefia was by Riveria's side, helping check the list of items. The only exception was Ace, standing alone with a look of wanting to help but not sure how, truly a breath of fresh air in the crowd. Riesel happened to walk out of the manor and immediately caught Ace's eye. Riesel. Ace called out with a sigh of relief as if finding solace. But her call also drew the attention of others present. Mr. Riesel. Lefia instinctively wanted to run over but then remembered she had work to do and stopped abruptly. Humph. Bet released Tiona and coldly snorted. Don't go too far. The rest of the Familia members also turned their gaze toward Riesel, watching this Familia rookie who had become a legendary character in Orario in just over a month. Some were envious, some were admiring, but there was no hint of jealousy or hatred. After all, he was their junior, their family, and their comrade. The more outstanding he was, the stronger their familia became, which was a good thing for them. It must be said that Loki, despite being unreliable, didn't choose anyone with a problematic character and personality. No wonder Alan sarcastically referred to them as a loving familia. In just over a month, Riesel had observed the behaviors of these familia seniors and kept them in mind. This was something he hadn't experienced even in his previous life, in a family with blood ties. The affection he never experienced, in the end, wasn't obtained in the family with blood ties but in this familia connected by a goddess. Perhaps, it was a kind of irony. Since he wasn't someone with many words, he silently kept all of this in his heart and began to approach everyone in silence. "You're late, Riesel." Tiona immediately jumped out, teasing him with a playful grin. "Sorry." Riesel replied and glanced around, realizing he was indeed the last one to arrive. Even though it wasn't past the departing time, he still apologized sincerely. "Just ignore her, she just wants to change the topic from her snack stealing." Tiona exposed her sister's intentions. Finn, Riveria, and Gareth also approached. "How's it going?" Finn asked with a slight smile. "Are you ready?" Riesel responded with a smile and nodded. He knew Finn wasn't asking about preparations for the expedition but rather about his updated status for the upcoming journey. Clearly, he had visited the Divine Room to update his status before departure, and all three top executives could tell. "Haha, this is really something to look forward to!" Gareth exclaimed loudly. "After accumulating for over a dozen days, with your growth speed, you should have gained a lot, yes. Judging by your reaction, you must have made quite some progress." Riveria observed his expression and smiled. "Could it be that you're already level 5? With that sentence, all the surrounding members held their breath and fell silent, especially the familia executives. Even Ace and Bet couldn't help but unconsciously perk up their ears. "How can it be that simple?" Riesel, seeing their reaction, smiled wryly. The accumulation of over a dozen days had indeed greatly improved his status. He was now at level 4, and logically, the development of basic abilities should have become much more difficult. Still, in just over 10 days, he managed to train Dex, AGI, and Mag to S rank, while STR reached A rank. This growth speed was still astonishing. However, no matter how one looked at it, in just over 10 days, it was impossible for him to level up to level 5. Without achieving any exploits and accumulating high-rank Excelia, at most, it can only make me go further on level 4. There's no way I can level up, right? Riesel stated calmly, making many people secretly sigh with relief. They were somewhat nervous, afraid that he would say he was already level 5. It was not that they didn't want him to progress, but the fact was too challenging for their heart, easily causing people to lose confidence in continuing to strive. Unfortunately, it seemed like the top executives of the Familia felt the excitement was not enough. One after another, they spoke up, shattering the silent celebration and relief in everyone's hearts. "For this expedition, our goal is the super deep floors you've never reached, perhaps even unknown floors that no one has ever reached." Finn explained with a smile. "Along the way, there are plenty of opportunities for you to accumulate high-rank Excelia. Yet, not to mention there are also the floor bosses. Just defeating them and gaining high-rank Excelia, even if it doesn't let you level up, should help you complete a large part of the exploit accumulation, right?" Gareth added while stroking his beard. "Although fighting in parties will distribute the Excelia, it's safe." Riveria looked at Riesel with a solemn expression. "This time, you can't act recklessly like before. Remember to cooperate well with everyone, don't be like some misbehaving kid, rushing out at every opportunity." As she mentioned misbehaving kid, her gaze subtly shifted to Ace. Ace felt extremely embarrassed and awkward, quickly turning her head away, looking guilty. Riesel also hesitated to speak. He really couldn't guarantee whether he could control himself or not, suddenly bursting out like that. Freya really wanted to assert that she had a say on this point. It wasn't without reason. During the time Riesel and she were in a party, not once did he give a heads up before suddenly charging out. "Ah, looks like we're adding another ace to our party." Tiona reveled in other people's misfortune. "I'm telling you guys, don't cause trouble for Captain, okay?" Tiona warned while shaking her head as she gazed toward the reckless duo. "Small fry is just small fry, you better not slow us down, boy." Bet even threw a cold remark from the side. Riesel and Ace immediately looked at each other in bewilderment, completely clueless as to how they suddenly became targets. But the two dared not say anything, just standing there in silence, one scratching his head, the other looking down. Okay, that's enough all of you, let them off. Finn chuckled, turned, and looked in the direction of the central tower of Twilight Manor. There, in the highest room, Loki, not behaving properly as always, was sprawled over the window, gazing in the expedition party's direction with a loose smile on her face. However, for some reason, everyone could sense encouragement, care, and a subtle trace of indiscernible affection in the goddess's gaze directed towards them. Go! It was as if everyone heard Loki's faint whisper carried by the wind. This whispered encouragement, riding on the wind, ignited a flame in everyone's hearts. Including Riesel, who was no exception. All right. Finn's childish face began to look serious, becoming more dignified. From this moment on, this Palom was no longer the amiable Familia Senior but the captain of the strongest Familia in Orario. And the captain's command was only one. Let's set off. Oh! With Finn's command, a neat and tidy shout soared to the sky, echoing throughout Orario. That was a battle cry. That was a trumpet call. All the people busy in the city, whether civilians or adventurers, were drawn to that magnificent shout in that split second, turning their heads to look in the direction of Loki Familia's base. Before long, many saw a fully armed and imposing group marching through the streets, heading towards Babel. Loki Familia is going on an expedition. It's Loki Familia. Loki Familia is heading into the dungeon. People hurriedly informed each other, causing pedestrians on the way to automatically split, moving to the sides, making way for Loki Familia. At that moment, what people saw was the strongest adventurer party in Orario, with countless experts renowned worldwide. The envy, admiration, and awe hidden in their eyes were almost impossible to conceal. Riesel blended in, attracting the attention of many, being watched. Suddenly, Riesel keenly sensed that among the countless gazes coming from all directions, there seemed to be one that was different. He became aware of this particular gaze and unconsciously turned his head to look. At that moment, he saw someone familiar. In the crowd gathered on the side, there was a youth. The youth had red eyes and white hair that seemed too old for his age, with a face carrying innocence and a hint of childishness, probably only about 13 to 14 years old. In the crowd, that youth was particularly inconspicuous. But in those red eyes of his, there was a more intense sense of envy, awe, and yearning than anyone else. And finally, as if making a decision, the youth, after a lingering glance in the Loki Familia expedition party's direction, squeezed out of the crowd and headed towards the entrance of what seemed to be the base of a certain Familia. Seeing this scene, Riesel almost immediately concluded that the youth was looking for a Familia to join. What are you looking at, Mr. Riesel? Walking alongside him, Freya noticed his unusual behavior and asked with doubt. Only then did Riesel come back to his senses and see the puzzled look from Freya and Ace nearby. Nah, it's nothing. Riesel shook his head, but suddenly smiled, a particularly bright one. This smile made the hearts of Ace and Freya, who had never seen him smile like that, skip a beat. Shortly afterward, the two girls heard his voice. I'm just looking forward to the future. Looking forward to my future. Looking forward to his future. Apart from Riesel himself, no one could understand the meaning of his words. However, that wasn't important since the gate to the dungeon began to appear before his eyes. Riesel stared at the massive tower, and the flame in his heart burned even more fiercely. Chapter 51, 50th Floor. In a certain dungeon floor, a desolate land where not a blade of grass grew. It was a vast expanse composed of rocks and gravel, everything tinted in shades of reddish-brown. The flying sand pervaded the barren earth. The turbid air expanded in the space. In this floor that looked like it had been deserted for ages and where people basically never set foot, a war erupted. Ro ar. Asterisk. Ro ar. Asterisk. Accompanied by chilling roars, a horde of monsters, stepping with footsteps heavy enough to stir the ground, charged like a stampeding herd. They raised dust as they advanced, launching an attack. These monsters had two twisted horns, reminiscent of goats, necks swollen with ugly horse-like faces, their size easily surpassing that of an adult. Muscles bulged, bodies were robust, and in their hands, they wielded club-like objects resembling fossilized bones, much like the appearance of savage barbarians. This vicious horde of monsters not only exuded powerful strength at first glance but was far beyond the monsters on the upper and even middle floors of the dungeon. They were at least level 3, and their numbers were vast, resembling a barbaric tribe dwelling in the wilderness. The momentum of their charge was as intimidating as a vast army, instilling fear in anyone who witnessed. Their target was the intruders who had abruptly entered this floor. Release. A palom, situated in the rear, commanded in this wilderness. At his command, the rearguard, already holding bows and arrows, simultaneously released their stretched bowstrings. Arrows made of refined iron formed a rain of arrows, slicing through the space and pouring down onto the oncoming horde of monsters. Puchi, 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 Puchi. In the next moment, arrows effortlessly pierced through the bodies of monsters, either penetrating their heads or penetrating their torsos, causing them to scream in agony, falling one by one, turning into dust. On this desolate land, chunks of not insignificant magic stones appeared, but they didn't catch anyone's attention. The monsters, completely disregarding their fallen comrades, some with several arrows sticking out of their bodies, continued to charge forward, snorting and roaring in anger, their crimson eyes wide open, heading towards the intruders with even more astonishing power. Facing such a fearless charge, many monsters eventually end up in front of the Loki Familia expedition party. Seeing this, the palom remained calm, issuing orders with a calm demeanor. Vanguard, raise your shields. Hold them back. Midguard, spread out. Look for opportunities to support. Rearguard mage, get ready to chant. Finn's voice incredulously reached everyone's ears, wiping away the tension and unease, prompting everyone in the expedition party to display determined expressions and start executing the orders. The dwarves and beastmen, wielding massive shields, took decisive steps forward, forming a shield wall and courageously facing the onslaught of the vicious monster army. The Midgard, consisting of humans, paloms, and Amazonas, tightened their faces and scattered in all directions. The exceptionally beautiful elves began gathering one by one around each other and led by Riveria, they started chanting their magic. Lefia. Stay focused. Pay attention to your chant. Riveria, in a supportive position, cautioned Lefia at her side. Yes. Lefia responded and took a deep breath, tightened her staff, and began chanting magic alongside her fellow adventurers. Boom, 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 boom. Meanwhile, at the vanguard, monsters had already clashed with the Loki Familia. Wielding heavy clubs, they roared and attacked, causing the dwarves and beastmen with massive shields to repeatedly retreat, their faces turning red. Get lost! Gareth, on the other hand, not only didn't retreat but charged forward like a small tank. Wherever he went, monsters were sent flying like soccer balls, an anomalously awe-inspiring scene. The Midgard, responsible for support, also made their move. Ha ha! Tioni wielded a pair of curved knives, her black hair dancing in the wind. Like brown-colored lightning, she flew back and forth, each graceful rotation of her slender arms precisely slicing through the chests of monsters one by one, destroying their core. Hi-a-a-a! Tiona, with an equally fierce shout, charged towards another group of monsters. In her hands, she held an exaggeratedly large double-bladed sword, spinning like a windmill, transforming into a ferocious meat grinder, cutting all the monsters in her path in half. Come on! The werewolf youth, Bet, had a ferocious expression on his face. He unleashed his speed to the fullest, faster than Tioni, more vicious than Tiona. He had no weapons in his hands but wore a pair of iron boots on his feet. His figure on the battlefield often went unnoticed until, in the blink of an eye, a monster was sent flying by his kick, creating muffled sounds around everyone like thunder. Such intense fighting, such a death battle, could only be described as war. Among Loki Familia's adventurers present, only 3 hadn't joined the fray. One was naturally positioned at the rear, issuing commands as the captain Finn. The other 2 were a swordsman and a swordswoman. The swordsman had black hair. The swordswoman had golden hair. They stood on either side of Finn, like bodyguards, their eyes tightly focused on the battlefield. It's time. Finn's incomparably calm voice resonated at a certain moment. Riesel, ace. When this call came from Finn's mouth, the 2 sprang into action. Bang! In the sudden burst of powerful wind, Riesel and Ace, like bullets being fired, charged out. The air stirred around the bodies of the 2 and whirlwinds came out of nowhere. Riesel and Ace, like 2 hurricanes, fearlessly and without hesitation, crossed everyone present and plunged into the midst of the monster horde. All those present only felt a gust of wind blowing past them, and in the blink of an eye, the 2 had arrived amid the monster horde. Squing! Their sword was drawn in the nick of time. Whoosh! Without mercy, their swords swung down. As Riesel and Ace charged into the monster horde, sword flashes erupted with each ruthless strike. Puchi, 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 Puchi. In an instant, monsters were sliced open, their bodies severed in half. A vast amount of blood sprayed into the sky. Anguished howls belatedly echoed. Riesel and Ace turned into storms of sword edges, their expressions were cold to the point of heartlessness, unleashing countless slashes that cut down each monster without mercy. Slash after slash. Swing after swing. Not a single monster could react in time. Not a single person could sense the shiver rising in their hearts at that moment. At this point, Riesel and Ace were genuine war machines, reducing any monster in their path to fragments, cruel yet beautiful. Amazing! Someone had unconsciously halted their movements, gazing at the slaughter scene, muttering in fascination or perhaps daze. TCH. Bet clicked his tongue, seemingly annoyed by something. Everyone held a mixture of awe and, unbeknownst to themselves, admiration, transfixed by the two swordsmen employing identical swordsmanship, relentlessly harvesting the lives of the monsters. Until retreat. At Finn's command, everyone snapped back to reality, collectively and decisively withdrawing from the battlefield. Riesel and Ace also came to a halt, showing no reluctance to leave, and promptly retreated. In that split second, a massive magic circle appeared on the ground. Led by Riveria, every elf mage stepped into her magic circle, an unusual air swirling around them, making their dresses dance elegantly and beautifully. Arie Leavatian. Riveria's voice faintly echoed, and one by one, every elf mage around her also invoked the names of their magic, awakening supernatural miracles. Thus, pillars of fire erupted. Thus, arrows of flames descended. It was a pure fire element wide area annihilation magic, a calamitous force with wide-ranging destructive power. They summoned this power, causing flames to either burst radiantly or rain down like a storm. For a moment, the monsters were ruthlessly covered by flames, their bodies engulfed, roars replaced by thunderous explosions, gradually vanishing amid the scorching heat. The desolate land was enveloped in hot air, lingering for a long time. Several hours later, a campsite sprung up on the ground, nestled in the wilderness. Amidst the noisy commotion, the sounds of metal scraping and casual chatter filled the air. Adventurers carried various equipment, some drove iron stakes into the ground, others ran around delivering messages, and some prepared food, lighting campfires, creating a lively atmosphere. This was Loki Familia's expedition camp. On a floor that seemed far from the depths of the underground, the Loki Familia expedition party had built this camp as their base, gathering together. "You're really amazing, Riesel." In one corner of the camp, Tiona danced with excitement. "They're foam wars, you know. Level 4 monsters that are seriously tough to handle alone. And what did you do? You sliced them up like it's no big deal. You're not level 4, you're totally a level 5 top-tier adventurer with that kinda strength." Tiona was genuinely impressed, and even Tioni, standing nearby, eyed Riesel with a strange look as if he were a humanoid monster. Meanwhile, Ace and Lefia exchanged bewildered looks as they watched him surrounded by the excited girls, their thoughts in turmoil. Mr. Riesel is really getting stronger. Lefia's gaze was complicated. "He's getting stronger again." Ace silently pondered, feeling a bit restless. Surrounded by the enthusiastic group of girls, Riesel chuckled, not sure how to react. He lifted his head to gaze at the high ceiling. This was the dungeon's 50th floor. Now, it had been almost 2 weeks since the Loki Familia expedition party ventured into the dungeon. He had overcome many challenges, finally reaching this floor. This expedition really turned out to be the right choice. Reflecting on the journey, Riesel smiled with contentment. Chapter 52, Lively and Heartwarming. On this expedition, Riesel truly gained a lot. Before this, the highest floor he had reached was the 17th floor. There, he encountered floor boss Goliath and engaged in a life and death battle, eventually succeeding in advancing to level 4. Since then, although he delved into the dungeon every day, due to the need for a round trip on the same day, he typically only went down to around the 20th floor, and anything below was unknown territory for him. So, for these 2 weeks, Riesel followed the Loki Familia expedition party, delving deeper into the dungeon, and also witnessing many unheard of wonders. For example, from the 19th to the 24th floor was a labyrinth-like area known as the large tree labyrinth, which resembled an underground forest. From the 25th floor to the 27th floor was an area full of water known as the Water City, renowned as a water paradise. From the 30th floor downward, there was the wilderness area, encountered from time to time. These strange and amazing sights, if not seen with one's own eyes, no one would believe they exist in the dungeon. Although Riesel knew about these wonders from the original work, experiencing them with his own eyes was an entirely different feeling. The genuine amazement and awe from the heart truly expanded his horizons, and that was no exaggeration. Of course, compared to the dungeon's geography, what truly benefited him was the countless monsters he encountered during the expedition. The guild, which managed the city, classified various floors of the dungeon based on their difficulty, generally dividing the explored floors into different tiers. The first floor to the 12th floor was the upper floors, where the local monsters were mostly classified as level 1. The 13th floor to the 24th floor was the middle floors, with local monsters mostly classified as level 2. The 25th floor to the 36th floor was the lower floors, with local monsters mostly classified as level 3. And from the 37th floor onward, it was the deep floors, where the local monsters were at least classified as level 4. Before this, Riesel had only ventured into the middle floors and hadn't entered the lower floors. In this situation, the fact that he was able to advance to level 4 was already a miracle. If it weren't for encountering the monster feast and floor boss, accumulating the exploit needed to level up would be basically impossible. Until this expedition, Riesel finally had the opportunity to enter the lower and even the deep floors. With that reason, the number of monsters he slew and the amount of excelia he gained could be easily imagined. Especially the subjugation of the floor bosses, jokingly referred to as the 4 heavenly kings by various gods. The floor boss of the 17th floor, the colossal giant monster, Goliath, was classified as level 4. The floor boss of the 27th floor, the colossal dragon monster, Amphisbena, was classified as level 5. The floor boss of the 37th floor, the colossal skeleton monster, Debas, was classified as level 6. On this journey, Loki Familia encountered these 3 floor bosses and, as a party, embarked on a battle against them. In the first battle against the 17th floor's Goliath, due to the lower classification level, Loki Familia's executives always advocated don't make a move, leaving it to the lower level members of the Familia to handle, to accumulate battle experience and high-rank excelia. In the second battle, against the 27th floor's Amphisbena, the executives still didn't make a move. Level 4 members within the Familia took the lead in the main combat roles, with the rest acting as support. In the third battle, against the 37th floor's Alias, the executives finally stepped in. The main attackers were Ace, Bet, Tiona, and Tioni, with the top executives leading the charge. In these 3 battles, Riesel participated in all but Goliath. However, instead of taking on a vanguard role, he supported from the midfield or provided long-range magic attacks from the rear, not particularly standing out. Though, after 2 floor boss battles, he still gained a considerable amount of high-rank excelia. Despite the excelia being distributed among all participating members in the party battle, as Finn and the others mentioned, exploits were still exploits. It would accumulate and make leveling up less challenging. Along with the monsters they faced along the way and the numerous powerful Fomwar they just defeated on the 49th floor, Riesel had a hunch. After this, maybe I can really advance to level 5. With that thought, his mood improved significantly. After all, level 5 was the domain of first-class adventurers. Orario gathered countless adventurers and familia, and the distinction of adventurers of different levels was particularly evident. Among them, level 1, known as low-class adventurers, comprised about half of the adventurers in Orario, with high-class adventurers, perhaps even less than half. In this group of high-class adventurers, less than half were level 2, functioning as third-class adventurers. Only a few successfully ascended to level 3 and level 4, achieving the status of second-class adventurers. However, when compared to first-class adventurers at level 5 and above, second-class adventurers in Orario were the majority. Just take a look at Loki Familia. As one of Orario's strongest familias, there were only 4 level 5 members in the entire Loki Familia. Freya Familia was the same, having only 4 level 5 members. In other words, all in all, level 5 adventurers in Orario added up to just a handful, maybe not even 30. This meant, as long as one became a level 5 first-class adventurer, they qualified to be considered a top-tier expert in Orario. If Riesel could successfully reach level 5 after this expedition, he would also have the confidence to deal with troubles in the main world. Too bad, Balor didn't show up. Riesel lamented. On this matter, he was quite disappointed. The floor boss of the 49th floor, Balor, was classified as level 7. As the leader of the so-called 4 heavenly kings, Balor was confirmed to be the strongest floor boss so far. No Familia, including Loki Familia, which had reached the 58th floor, had encountered a floor boss stronger than Balor. If this level 7 floor boss appeared, Finn, Riveria, and Gareth would probably have to personally join the battle, going all out, and coordinating with the support of everyone to have a chance at defeating it. And if such a monster were successfully defeated, the high rank Excelia obtained would undoubtedly be massive. Even if it were distributed among the party members, it could help most adventurers below level 5 to level up. Riesel was a bit regretful that he didn't get the chance to encounter this rumored strongest floor boss. If they managed to defeat this floor boss, he would surely level up this time, right? Just as he casually pondered such thoughts, a disgruntled voice awakened him. Hey, Riesel, are you even listening to us? Tiona's voice sounded like an angry child, bringing him back to reality. He immediately saw her staring at him with puffed-up cheeks. What are you thinking over there? You look so absorbed. Tiona complained. Tioni, Lefia, and Ace were also watching him, making him shake his head to dispel his wandering thoughts. Sorry, got a bit lost in thought there. Riesel apologized to everyone. Are you tired? Lefia asked, not minding his behavior, and spoke somewhat worriedly. Well, it's understandable since it's your first expedition after all. Not everyone can adapt to the environment and combat intensity here. Mr. Riesel, you should take care of yourself. Yup. Tioni nodded in agreement. Humans are naturally fragile, and this is a floor that normal level 4 adventurers can't even reach. It's normal to feel out of place. Hey, in that last battle, you weren't pushing yourself too hard to keep up with Ace, were you? Tioni asked, suspiciously. If you were, I'd suggest taking a good rest. Not many in the Familia can match Ace's pace, you know. Heck, even we sometimes struggle. But you? You were right there with her, slaying monsters left and right without missing a beat. Just be careful not to burn yourself out, okay? Riesel didn't respond to her words because Ace spoke up first to deny it. Riesel isn't forcing himself. Ace shook her head. Riesel is really strong. Others might not see whether he was pushing himself, but does Ace really not see it? She and Riesel had practiced together countless times, knowing exactly how he looked when he was pushing himself and how effortless he appeared when in control. Although his performance against the Fomwar surprised her, just looking at his face, unflushed and unbreathless, she knew that kind of battle didn't even make him break a sweat. In other words, Riesel's current strength is really no less than level 5. After saying that, Ace fell silent and didn't say anything more. Not just Ace, even Lefia and the 2 Amazonas sisters fell silent. They just stared at Riesel as if he were a bizarre creature. Under the scrutiny of the girls, Riesel quietly took a step back. I'm going to find something to do. Leaving those words behind, he turned and ran. Hey, stop. Don't run. Tiona and Tioni, without thinking, immediately chased after him. Lefia blinked, still not comprehending what had happened. However, soon, a gust of wind blew by again. It was the wind kicked up by Ace, and surprisingly, she also chased after Riesel. Wait. Miss Ace. Lefia, no longer dazed, hurriedly caught up. Several beautiful girls were chasing a boy in the camp, making everyone else in the camp bite their fingers. Don't fool around. You bunch of idiots. Bet, almost hit by Tiona, hastily protected the pile of firewood he had just painstakingly collected with a furious expression. But Tiona and the rest paid no attention. Come in. Obediently strip yourself. Just let us have a look. What's the big deal? We just want to see your back. So, chasing Mr. Riesel was for this. The girls' screams and exclamations echoed one after another, turning the entire camp into chaos. It wasn't until the 3 top executives appeared that the commotion stopped. All right, enough playing around, it's time to eat. Riveria shouted toward Riesel and the 4 girls. Yes. Their panicked response finally came, yet the atmosphere remained lively and heartwarming. Chapter 53, Cadmus's spring. The 50th floor was a safe floor where monsters didn't spawn. There were quite a few safe floors like this in the dungeon. While it wasn't guaranteed that no monsters would appear, fewer monsters were coming from other floors, so staying on a safe floor reduced the chances of sudden accidents or attacks. That was why these safe floors became the preferred resting areas for adventurers in the dungeon. The Loki Familia occupied a cliff on the 50th floor, which was easily guarded and hard to attack, making it their camp. The camp had been mostly set up, and the Familia members had finished their busy tasks, gathering around the campfire for a meal. A large pot sat on the fire in the center of the camp, and everyone gathered around it, relaxing and chatting while eating. Riesel sat in a corner, holding a bowl of soup. Before he could take more than a few sips, a helpless expression appeared on his face. Now let's see where you are going to run. Tiona sat to his left, looking like she had caught him, wearing a smug expression. Seriously, I just got scolded by Captain. Tioni, sitting on Tiona's side, was a bit annoyed, chewing on wild fruits to satisfy her hunger and frustration. Ace sat on the right, not holding soup or wild fruits, just munching on her rations, looking like she wasn't getting much nutrition. As for Lefia, she had already broken. Sitting between Mr. Riesel and Miss Ace. The elf sandwiched between Riesel and Ace seemed inexplicably happy, with a blush of happiness on her face. Looking at this scene, Riesel looked around. Sure enough, many people cast envious and jealous glances at him, even Bet was grinning angrily, seemingly eager to deliver divine punishment to him, who was surrounded by the land of warmth and tenderness. Let's just ignore it. Riesel could only bury himself in his soup, pretending he didn't see anything. When everyone had eaten their fill, Finn, as the leader of the expedition party, finally spoke up. I'll say a few words first. His voice captured everyone's attention. Firstly, thanks for your hard work, everyone. Finn, with a smile rarely seen since entering the dungeon, continued. We've safely reached the 50th floor this time, without any casualties or losses. This alone is worth celebrating. But, the real test is still in front of us. He toned down his smile a bit. Our goal has never been reaching the 50th floor, but rather the unexplored territory 59th floor. This was a floor Loki Familia had yet to conquer. The highest floor Loki Familia had reached was the 58th. Therefore, exploring and conquering the 59th floor became the Familia's primary objective. No doubt, the floor we're about to reach is an area untouched by many Familia in Orario, not even Freya Familia has entered the 59th floor. Finn's words echoed in everyone's ears, causing them to hold their breath. If our Familia can successfully reach the 59th floor, exploring this unknown territory, regardless of the loot, our reputation alone will make us famous throughout Orario, etching our names into history. For large Familia like Loki Familia, dungeon exploration was no longer just about gaining wealth and power, fame was also essential. With enough fame, Loki Familia could continue to grow, attracting more adventurers to join and gaining more convenience and benefits from the guild and the city. This solidified the Familia's unshakable position in Orario. Therefore, at Loki Familia's level, the need was no longer just operational funds for survival, as smaller Familia required, but rather fame and glory. For the sake of fame and glory, even certain benefits could be sacrificed as a price. In this context, reaching the 59th floor became Loki Familia's top priority. However, before heading to the 59th floor, we need to complete a commission. Finn changed the topic. I need to send a few elites to the 51st floor to collect a specified amount of water from Cadmus's spring. As soon as his words fell, the expressions of many present members changed. Seriously? Are we going to mess with that troublesome Cadmus's spring? Tiona, sitting on Riesel's side, groaned. Ace also raised her head, looking at Finn seriously. Riesel's mind was filled with information about Cadmus's spring. It was a very rare geyser scattered on the 51st floor. The water collected from this geyser could be used to make very valuable potions. In the business-type Familia, especially those focused on medicine or alchemy, there was a demand for this type of spring water. Well-known medicinal Familia, especially those with a reputation, had a high demand for this water, which could only be collected from super-deep floors. To meet this demand, Loki Familia, as an exploration-type Familia capable of reaching the 51st floor, had received this kind of task more than once to collect a specified amount of spring water. Such tasks were typically referred to as adventurer commissions. Familia without the strength to reach specific floors and gather their own materials often issue adventurer commissions to more powerful familia. They offer a certain reward in return for the familia collecting materials for them. This time, Loki familia received such a commission. However, this was by no means an easy task. Cadmus's spring has a guardian. Finn said with a serious tone. Cadmus, nicknamed the Strong Dragon, is a dragon species monster. The spring water from Cadmus's spring is basically this monster's possession, and it swallows up most of it every time it erupts. In other words, to obtain the water from Cadmus's spring, they had to face this dragon. The classification level of this dragon was level 6. It was a rare species specialized in strength. If talking about STR, strength, alone, Cadmus exceeded even the 37th floor's floor boss, Debas. This was why most familiar members' expressions changed color at the mention of it. Even Diona couldn't help but groan, while Ace became serious. Of course, if that was the only issue, this commission wouldn't be too troublesome. After all, Debas had been defeated by Loki Familia countless times before, and with the Familia's strength, there was no need to fear a single dragon, right? The problem was, this time, Finn planned to send out only a few elites. A limited amount of water can be collected from one Cadmus's spring. To reach the specified amount, we have to go to 2 different geysers. We've been in the dungeon for 2 weeks already, and our supplies are running low. Considering that, after completing this adventurer commission, we still need to go to the 59th floor and the return journey will take at least 5 or 6 days, we can't spend too much time on the adventurer commission to avoid depleting our supplies. Therefore, we need to split into 2 parties, head to the 2 geysers simultaneously, to improve efficiency, and shorten the time. Also, since the location of the geysers can't accommodate too many people, it's better to have fewer people. This way, the operation will be more convenient. Finn explained, laying out each consideration. First-class adventurers will be the main priority of this commission, with only a few of them being dispatched, while the rest will stay back at the camp. Finn began selecting the commission's participants. Naturally, the first to be considered were the top executives and executives. Since the priority was on first-class adventurers, they couldn't escape. Gareth, Bet, and I will form one party, and bring in a level 4 as a supporter. Ace, Diona, Dione, you 3 will be in a party together, and find a reliable supporter as well. Riveria will stay at the camp, responsible for defending it. As Finn made his arrangements, the participants nodded in succession. However, Bet, with a frown, voiced his concerns. Oi, is it okay not to have a level 6 in the second party? Facing a level 6 dragon species monster stronger than the 37th floor's floor boss, it was indeed worrisome that the second party didn't have a level 6 member. Finn, however, seemed to have considered this thoroughly. Are you okay with this, Ace? Finn, ignoring Bet's complaint, turned to Ace and calmly asked. No problem. Ace replied with an expressionless face, leaving Bet speechless. Everyone knew why Finn specifically asked Ace. It was because her strength was no less than that of level 6. With her level 5 status and aerial, she could undoubtedly display power comparable to level 6. With Ace in the second party, even facing a strong dragon wouldn't pose too much of a problem. Riesel, on the other hand, seemed to have noticed something fishy. Is Captain grouping them like this to toughen up the Familia executives' capabilities? The level 5 executives were destined to be the backbone of the Familia. Whether it was Ace or the Amazonas sisters, they were all still young, not even 18 yet. At this age, in Riesel's previous life, they wouldn't even have finished high school yet. To give these future backbones of the Familia as much training as possible and develop their independent act capabilities, Finn deliberately arranged for these 3 girls to form a party. As for Bet, who was also a level 5, his age was already 22 and had experienced much more than others, so he didn't need much worrying about. The only problem was that relying solely on these 3 girls to act, even if they were strong, was a bit concerning in terms of their approach to situations. After all, these 3 weren't the type to calmly handle emergencies and make proper arrangements and decisions. Having only these 3 in action was bound to lead to some unexpected events. Then, Finn turned his head to Riesel. Riesel, go with them. With those words, everyone's attention once again focused on Riesel. Me? Riesel was taken aback. Yup. Finn nodded with a faint smile. Since what we need is the strength of first-class adventurers, with your strength, do you think you can escape this commission? Everyone understood the implied meaning in Finn's words. His point was straightforward. Like Ace, he believed that Riesel already possessed strength not inferior to level 5. It wasn't just Finn who thought so. After discussions among Familia's top executives, such as Riveria and Gareth, they unanimously agreed that Riesel now had strength comparable to level 5. Therefore, this time, Finn not only wanted to train Ace, Tiona, and Tioni but also to focus on training Riesel. Chapter 54, Is this party really okay? Now, Riesel indeed had strength no less than level 5. Although he was currently at level 4, before this, he leveled up 3 times in a row and leveled up with all basic abilities at SSS, boasting a latent ability higher than the average adventurer. Most people, before leveling up, managed to get 1 or 2 basic abilities to B rank at most, with very few reaching A rank, let alone S rank. Only prodigies like Ace, Bet, Tiona, Tioni, and others who became level 5 adventurers at a young age had the possibility of developing their basic abilities to S rank. For example, Freya, considered to be Riveria's successor, matched level 5 attack power while at level 3. Besides skill assistance, the main reason was she reached an S rank in Mag before leveling up to level 3. Just getting 1 basic ability to S made her stand out among mages of the same level. Riesel, with all basic abilities at the unprecedented SSS, accumulated even more astonishing latent basic abilities. With such circumstances, Riesel considered by Ace to be no weaker than level 4 expert adventurers was to be expected. Now at level 4, he had 3 basic abilities at S rank and the remaining 2 at A rank. This status, undoubtedly, put him at the cream of the crop among level 4. Being the cream of the crop at level 4, coupled with the latent basic abilities accumulated from previous levels, purely in terms of status alone, he was not inferior to those level 5 adventurers. Plus, he also possessed lightweight and swordsman, 2 development abilities specialized for combat. Although both development abilities were only at H rank, his endless skill would boost the obtained development abilities. Therefore, the amplification of the 2 development abilities for him became quite significant. Therefore, even without using magic, Riesel, in his normal state, was enough to rival level 5, and he might have even outclassed ordinary level 5 adventurers. Precisely because of this, when he faced the Fomoir horde on the 49th floor, even charging alongside Ace, he could hold his own without being at a disadvantage. Finn, Riveria, and Gareth observed and understood this in Riesel's performance along the way. Astonished, they decided, after careful consideration, to treat him as an executive equivalent to a level 5 adventurer. Why else did Finn arrange Riesel and Ace together? Not just because they had become the party's trump card capable of challenging higher levels. It could be said that in terms of importance within the party, Riesel even surpassed Bet, Tiona, and Tioni, reaching a point where he could be mentioned in the same breath as Ace. The 3 top executives unanimously believed that the 3 Familia members they needed to focus on developing were Riesel, Ace, and Freya. While Bet, Tiona, and Tioni were certainly prodigies, Riesel, Ace, and Freya stood out as super prodigies. Especially Riesel, whose potential exceeded even Ace and Freya, could no longer be called just a super prodigy but should be referred to as an anomaly. In summary, since they wanted to hone their capabilities, Finn naturally considered including Riesel in this commission as reasonable and fair. "Are you okay with this, Riesel?" Finn chuckled, repeating the same words he had used when asking Ace. "A strong dragon." Riesel muttered, then said with a calm tone. "Of course, no problem." Thinking about facing a level 6 dragon species, he had no reservations. He welcomed challenging strong enemies. "Riesel, don't act recklessly, okay?" Riveria said while observing his enthusiasm as if she could read his thoughts. "Whether it's Ace or Tiona, they are girls who lack restraint and don't know their limits. As a man, you have to keep an eye on them. I don't know if putting you in this party is the right call." Gareth grumbled. "You're like the second Ace, equally unreliable." Hearing that statement, Riesel instantly fell silent. Ace, who was affected by the conversation, blinked, then lowered her head, focusing on her food. Riveria turned to Freya. "Freya, you also go." "Me?" Freya was startled to be singled out. "You'll be their supporter," Riveria added. However, this made Riesel more certain that these 3 top executives had already discussed privately to toughen up the younger members. "Raoul, you're with us." Gareth caught another person. "Me too." A human youth, who had been cowering within the crowd, looking afraid of being called out, made a face of despair. "Come on, cheer up a little. A cat girl sitting beside the human youth slapped his shoulder, making him nod with a tearful expression. Riesel glanced at these two. Both the human youth and the cat girl were long-standing members of the Loki Familia, joining even before some of the executives. Their levels had reached level 4. On several occasions, Riesel had seen Finn and the others handing over command of the party to these two when deciding not to make a move. For example, Raoul was in charge of directing the battles against Goliath and Amphisbena. Clearly, these two were also young members receiving special attention from the top executives. If Loki Familia's members were classified in terms of potential and importance, these two would be in the third rank. Riesel, Ace, and Lefia were in the first tier. Bet, Tiona, and Tioni were in the second tier. The human youth, Raoul, and the cat girl, Anakitty, belonged to the third tier. In this tier, there was also Alicia, an elf girl, and Elfie, a human girl. As for the rest, they would have to be pushed further back. This was Riesel's unofficial classification based on the original work and his understanding of the Familia. Ultimately, he wasn't very familiar with Familia seniors like Raoul. In over a month since joining the Familia, he had been busy every day, only engaging in deeper conversations with Lefia and Ace, and to some extent, the executives and top executives. His interactions with other members were limited to mere nods. Consequently, he didn't pay much attention to Raoul and the others. Just like now, knowing Raoul joined Finn's party, Riesel only glanced at him and then moved on without further interest. That's settled then. Finn decisively confirmed the entire arrangement with a firm tone. After dinner, you all go back and take a break, then we set off. Let's try to wrap up the commission today. Upon hearing this, everyone nodded in succession, indicating their understanding. He teamed up with Riesel. Tiona laughed foolishly by Riesel's side, seemingly unaware of the reason for her joy. I'd rather join Captain's party. In contrast to her little sister, Tioni had a downcast expression. The way she looked at Finn became pitiful. Among the Amazonas twins, the elder sister was undoubtedly Finn's loyal fan. Of course, there was another loyal fan in this party. Please guide me, Miss Ace. Lefia wore an expression of uncertain joy and, finally, spoke softly to Ace. Sure. Ace simply nodded, not saying much. Even so, Lefia turned her dilemma into happiness, and her eyes toward Ace began to sparkle with starlight. Is this party really okay? Riesel finally began to worry. Two brain-dead die-hard fangirls, a goofy and naive innocent girl, and a seemingly aloof but actually naturally awkward doll-like girl. Suddenly, he felt a wave of concern. It seems like I really can't mess around this time. Riesel sighed tiredly. Several hours later. Leaving behind Riveria and the rest of the expedition party at the base camp, Finn led his commission party to set off to the 51st floor. Take care of yourselves. If you encounter danger, just abandon the commission, your life is the most important. After advising the second commission party, Finn took the lead with Gareth, Bet, and Raoul. Riesel, Ace, Lefia, Tiona, and Tioni waited for a moment before also departing. The structure of the 51st floor resembled a typical underground maze. The walls, floors, and ceilings, neither stone nor soil in material, all presented a deep graphite color, as if deliberately designed. The naturally formed underground passages had several corners and intersections, making it easy for those who entered to lose their way. The party walked along the wide straight passage, illuminated by the phosphorescent glow above, but their pace was far from slow. Cadmus's spring should be over there. Lefia, as usual, carried a large backpack and held a map in her hand, directing everyone. Monsters incoming! Tioni shouted as she looked in the direction Lefia pointed, her eyebrows raised. But her voice was quickly drowned out by the roars of the monsters. ****. Ace drew a sword from her waist, her gaze becoming extremely sharp. In front of them, a horde of rough and shiny black rhinoceros-like monsters charged forward, walking on their hind legs. Black rhinos! Lefia tensed her nerves. Black rhinos, monsters appearing on the 51st floor, had astonishingly tough skin, capable of easily deflecting most weapon attacks. Even level 5 adventurers would find them challenging. Recalling the information about these monsters, Riesel reached for his waist, preparing to draw Hermit, but hesitated for a moment since Ace and Tiona had already rushed ahead. This scene made him abandon the idea of charging forward. Perfect! Riesel's eyes flashed slightly. Let's try out the new magic I learned right here. With this decision, he began to chant. Under his feet, a magic circle expanded. Mage. It was the development ability Riesel chose upon reaching level 4. It brought various auxiliary effects, such as strengthening the magic's power, expanding the range, and optimizing the efficiency of mind when using magic. It was proof of an advanced mage. At this moment, Riesel finally awakened and used this development ability. Chapter 55, 10 Magic. During this period, Riesel almost devoted himself to exploring the dungeon day and night, but he never forgot about possessing magic known as Almighty. After learning Ace's aerial and Lephia's arc's ray, he considered practicality and various factors and learned quite a few magic from others. Without a doubt, with Lephia as his party companion and having traveled through the dungeon together for over a month, aside from her elf ring, Riesel effortlessly learned her remaining magic. Riveria, as the strongest mage in Orario, individually possessed 9 kinds of magic. Naturally, Riesel didn't miss the chance to seek guidance from her whenever she had time. In the end, he learned 5 magic from her. In addition to these, Riesel also acquired a powerful magic from Finn, designed to be a trump card for turning the tables in trouble. With all of those learned magic, coupled with the previously learned aerial and arc's ray, Riesel, like Riveria, now possessed 9 magic. This was also the reason he was able to trigger the learning conditions for a developmental ability known as Mage. This development ability was proof of being an advanced and expert mage since obtaining it wasn't easy. Generally, it was a patent for pure rearguard mages, while adventurers who could only use 1 or 2 magic to assist in combat, would find it impossible to trigger Mage. Even someone like Ace, whose wind enchant magic was considered to be overpowered, couldn't trigger Mage. The rest of the members in the Familia were similar, treating magic as an auxiliary combat method rather than the primary one, making it practically impossible to trigger Mage. Riesel, on the other hand, successfully triggered Mage after reaching level 4, relying on his astounding number of magic and usage rate. This development ability could enhance the power of magic, the effects of magic, the range of magic, and many more, making it an almost omnipotent magic-specific auxiliary development ability. However, at this very moment, he wasn't using any of the 9 magic he had previously learned. Instead, he was employing a magic he had recently learned by chance. Follow blindly the sun in the sky. Blossom, armor of laurel, so that all will flee from thee. Stepping onto the magic circle, Riesel chanted a brief chant. Remure. As the name of the magic was uttered, a deep green light membrane appeared around everyone present. Ace and Tiona, the first to dash forward, were the first to feel the change in their bodies. Their speed suddenly skyrocketed, especially Ace, who was already as fast as the wind. In an instant, she vanished, appearing in front of a black rhinos. The black rhinos was startled and halted its charge, leaving Ace with widened eyes, seemingly at a loss. On the other hand, Tiona directly attacked a black rhinos in front of her without hesitation. Hi-ay-ay-ay! Amid her tender shout, Tiona, with her petite frame, swung the enormous double-bladed sword, delivering a striking blow that sliced through the black rhinos in a flash. The once proud tough hide of the black rhinos, considered to be on par with first-class equipment, seemed as fragile as paper before the dazzlingly fast slash of her sword, easily tearing it apart. So fast! Even Tiona herself seemed surprised by her own prowess. Her exclamation happened to snap Ace out of her bewilderment. Piuchi! With a flash of a silver sword, a cold arc of light cut through the massive body of a black rhinos, cleaving it in 2 with a seemingly effortless strike. Ace executed an extremely fast slash, effortlessly breaking through the tough hide of the black rhinos. While it was true that she wielded first-class equipment, desperate, capable of piercing the black rhino's tough hide, the attack enchantment formed by the sudden surge in speed under the deep green light membrane was equally crucial. What the heck happened? Tiona, who had just unsheathed her curved sword, was astonished by the display of Ace and Tiona. Protection magic. Lephia finally reacted, reflexively blurting out at the sight. As everyone was astonished by the sudden display of Ace and Tiona, Riesel's voice suddenly rang out. Limited duration, move fast. His brief words snapped everyone out of their astonishment. Without hesitation, they launched a fierce assault on the numerous black rhinos before them. Lephia! Riesel shouted at the elf who remained by his side, not rushing into the fray. Yes! Lephia's grip on her staff suddenly tightened as she took a deep breath. In the over a month since teaming up with Riesel to explore the dungeon, Lephia had undergone significant growth. The determination she made in the reception room that day had driven her continuous efforts over the past month. Although her growth might not have been as eye-catching as his astonishing speed, she had indeed made considerable progress. Now was the time for her to showcase the results of her efforts. Proud warriors, snipers of the forest. Freya slowly closed her eyes, as if the vicious monsters and brutal roars before her didn't exist at all. It was as if even the battles of her companions had faded away. With an ethereal voice, she chanted her magic. Take up your bows before the advancing plunderers. Answer the call of your brethren and ready your arrows. Tinge them with flame, the lamplight of the forest. Release them, the fire arrows of the fairies. Falling like rain, burn away the savages. This was the last of the three magic in her possession. Unlike the single-shot offensive magic like Arc's Ray or the summoning magic of Elf Ring, this was pure and renowned for its destructive power and attack range, a wide-area annihilation magic. Fusillade Fall Aurica. As the magic circle expanded from beneath her feet, Freya raised her staff, turning magical energy into a fiery red radiance that soared into the sky. In the next moment, the red radiance transformed into an endless rain of fire, descending from the sky. Boom, 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 boom. Explosions, explosions, and explosions. Explosions filled the air as the rain of fire descended, hitting the ground in a split second, creating a continuous succession. The labyrinth was suddenly illuminated by the fire, and the ground shook continuously from the bombardment. Countless black rhinos were enveloped by the rain of fire, directly hit, and consumed by flames. In an instant, a large sea of fire appeared, burning the labyrinth with crackling and rattling sounds. This was Freya's fire element wide area annihilation magic and the reason she was considered to rival level 5 in attack power. Under the burning of this magic, black rhinos, known for their tough hides that only first-class equipment could pierce, were helpless. They quickly turned into burned charcoal, falling one after another with wailing and screams. Clearly, it was only magic unleashed by a level 3, but it incinerated a vast group of monsters that even level 5 would find challenging. This was Freya's magic. Her excessively outstanding mag and the support of skills allowed this level 3 elf to burn through a large group of monsters spanning 2 levels. As long as she could chant magic steadily and release it steadily, she would be stronger than the average level 5. In the past, due to mental immaturity, she couldn't achieve stable magic chanting. But now, this flaw had gradually improved through continuous coordination with Riesel. So hot! Wah! Ugh! One after another, Tioni, Tiona, and Ace escaped from the sea of fire, and the deep green light membrane on their bodies gradually disappeared. Sorry. Done chanting, Freya finally opened her eyes, realizing that she had almost affected everyone, and started to panic. Don't worry, they're fine. Riesel, as if expecting this outcome, reassured her. The magic he used, known as Remuer, not only enhanced the speed but also excelled in defense. It was a protection magic he unexpectedly learned from someone else, reinforcing and significantly strengthening AGI. The effect of magic was proportional to the user's mag. With Riesel's SSS rank in mag at every level, plus his current level's mag in S rank, it yielded surprisingly good results. With the amplification from the mage development ability, when Riesel cast protection magic, even the somewhat minor enhancement of N that Remuer originally had was remarkably impressive. Thanks to this, even if the girls were hit directly by Freya's Fusillade Fall Aurica, they wouldn't suffer heavy injuries, only being affected slightly, which wouldn't harm them at all. Remuer was a magic mentioned in the original work, and Riesel coincidentally remembered its detailed effects. Therefore, as long as someone cast this magic in front of him, he could witness it with his own eyes and memorize it with Almighty to effortlessly learn it. Recently, when Loki Familia was preparing for the expedition, Riesel happened to see the user of this magic in the middle floor of the dungeon, using it right in front of him. Thus, he easily acquired this protection magic and ultimately possessed 10 types of magic, surpassing 9 Hell Reveria, who possessed only 9. Naturally, no one knew about this. What kind of magic is this? Tiona and Tioni returned, looking at the gradually disappearing light membrane on their bodies with great astonishment. Ace also gazed at him, her eyes full of curiosity. They couldn't help but be bewildered, the magic just now was powerful. Although not on the level of overpowered enhancement like Ariel, it was still quite astonishing magic, making Ace feel that her strength had soared when influenced by it. Just a magic I unexpectedly learned. Riesel didn't explain too clearly because he saw monsters being attracted by the commotion they caused, seemingly approaching. Let's leave here first. He stopped his magic circle and spoke seriously to everyone. Although the girls were curious, they had to suppress their curiosity and quickly follow his footsteps, leaving. Before long, numerous monsters appeared, roaring while lingering at the edge of the sea of fire. The sea of fire burned slowly as if it would never extinguish, dispelling the darkness inside the labyrinth. Chapter 56, Abnormality. The following journey of Riesel and his party was undertaken with a policy of avoiding battles as much as possible. Their sole objective was Cadmus's spring, where they had to face off against a level 6 dragon species. At this point, saving energy as much as possible was crucial to concentrate all their energies against the strong dragon. Even Freya was urged by Riesel not to use magic unless absolutely necessary, to prevent wasting mind. Although she had plenty of mind recovery potions, considering they still had to reach the 59th floor and face multiple battles along the way, it was best to minimize the usage of supplies. Finn also supported this approach. After 2 weeks of the expedition, the Familia's supplies were running low. To ensure they had supplies for the return journey and to avoid unnecessary consumption of items and medicine, conservation became a top priority. In this situation, even Ace, who usually charged toward monsters without hesitation, dashed without waiting to see the monster, ignoring them. Tiona followed suit, stashing away her large double-bladed sword and following behind. Tioni, without saying a word, was determined not to waste anything unnecessarily and followed Finn's instructions. Among all of them, only Riesel was somewhat carefree. Although he didn't go too wild, he still charged at monsters when he saw them, while maintaining the effect of Remure, enhancing everyone with his protection magic. "You're wasting too much mind." Tioni complained about his extravagance. "It's okay. I have spirit healing." Riesel casually responded, stopping her dissatisfaction. His nonchalant answer left Tioni speechless. "Freak!" Tiona muttered in frustration. Ace and Freya, on the other hand, felt a bit conflicted. Riesel's high-rank spirit healing, which was an outstanding development ability for any mage, probably recovered a massive amount of mind every second, right? With spirit healing on that kind of rank, even if Riesel continued to use magic without stopping, it seemed unlikely that he would run out of mind. How could Ace, who frequently used mind-consuming magic, and Freya, who relied on magic as her primary combat method, not feel conflicted? "I really want it." Ace and Freya thought the same thing at the same time. But unfortunately, it was just a wish. Thus, the entire group faced only a few unavoidable battles, and otherwise, their journey proceeded smoothly. Due to having a map, even with poor terrain and complex roads resembling a maze, they continued moving toward their destination without trouble. As they progressed, the group suddenly felt that the number of monsters seemed to be decreasing. "How come it feels like there are fewer monsters around?" Tiona was the first to express confusion about this. "Is it because we've deviated from the main route?" Freya, looking at the map, voiced her confusion as well. Cadmus's spring was located deep in the 51st floor, just slightly off the main route leading to the 52nd floor. But last time we went to find Cadmus's spring, there seemed to be quite a few monsters around here. Tiona expressed her confusion again, causing Tioni to furrow her brows. Ace also lowered her gaze, pondering. Riesel appeared thoughtful but couldn't help but feel a flutter in his heart. "I can't help but feel like this situation was mentioned in the original work." As soon as he had this thought, Riesel's exceptional memory came into play. He carefully recalled the plot of the original work, and a lightning bolt suddenly flashed in the back of his mind. Could it be that thing? Riesel couldn't help but whisper. "What?" Including Ace, all the girls heard his murmur and stood there confused. At this moment, Riesel suddenly turned to Freya. "Freya, how far is the spring from here?" His sudden question left Freya at a loss. It should be not far from the cavern at the end of this road." Although somewhat bewildered, she quickly answered his question. But almost as soon as she finished speaking, Riesel rushed out. "Mr. Riesel!" Freya cried out in surprise. "Riesel!" Tiona and Tioni were also momentarily stunned. Only Ace, seeing him dash out all of a sudden, transformed into a gust of wind without hesitation and followed suit. "Wait! What are you doing?" "Miss Ace!" Tiona, Tioni, and Freya finally couldn't stand still and quickly started running, charging ahead. At this moment, Riesel had already rushed into the cavern at the end of the road, and upon entering the cavern, he immediately stopped in his tracks. "Riesel!" Ace followed closely, standing by his side, but shortly afterward, her eyes opened wide. What happened to you? Why are you running? Huff. Huff. Tioni and Lefia also arrived, the first two complaining, while the last caught her breath. But the next moment, the scene that caught the three's eyes made them, like Ace, widen their eyes. Before them, the cavern, for some unknown reason, had suffered brutal and inhumane devastation. Whether it was the walls, the floor, or even the ceiling, everything seemed to have been damaged. Either filled with cracks or completely shattered, it was in a complete mess. Many trees that grew here were either snapped or flattened. That was not all. What truly surprised everyone was the signs of corrosion everywhere, causing some parts of the trees to turn deep purple, emitting black smoke, and giving off an indescribable stench. What's going on? How did it become like this here? Tiona and Tioni looked at each other in bewilderment. Ace stayed silent and deeply furrowed her brows. The spring. Unconsciously stepping back, Lefia's peripheral vision caught a glimpse of a corner of the cavern. There, a pool of spring water sat, radiating a mysterious dark blue brilliance, extremely dazzling. It was Cadmus's spring, and it seemed like there was still a lot of water inside, as if it hadn't been swallowed by the dragon guarding this place. Wait, where's the dragon? Tioni immediately noticed the abnormality. Indeed, the strong dragon that should have been guarding this area was surprisingly absent, or rather, it was no longer here. Everyone involuntarily shifted their gaze to the front of the spring. There, a large amount of dust was piled up. Could that be the corpse of Cadmus? Tiona's unintentional murmur silenced everyone. All eyes were fixed on the remains of the monster, now reduced to a pile of dust, clearly disintegrated after losing its core. A prolonged silence hung in the air. There was no doubt that the monster guarding this area was now dead. But the question remained, who had killed a level 6 Cadmus? It couldn't have been the work of adventurers, right? Tioni whispered. It seems like we're the only familia undertaking an expedition during this period. Familias with the ability to venture to this floor were already scarce in Orario, and only a handful of them. As far as she knew, only Loki familia had been actively exploring the dungeon recently. Therefore, it was highly unlikely that another familia had ventured to this place recently. In other words, did the monsters fight each other? Tiona murmured to herself. Hearing that, a chill ran through everyone's hearts. It was not without reason, since they were well aware that if monsters were killing each other, things were about to get complicated. Monsters generally did not attack other monsters. If monsters did attack each other, there were usually only two possibilities. The first was a sudden, accidental event. A monster could lose its sanity due to some accident, making it attack indiscriminately until one side was completely defeated. The second possibility was an irregular. In the dungeon, some monsters enhanced their strength by consuming the magic stones of others, voraciously devouring the cores of their kin to continuously get stronger. These monsters, known as strengthened species, gained immense power by consuming the magic stones of other monsters, surpassing their original classification levels. These monsters were rarer than rare, and their ability to continuously get stronger by feeding on magic stones could even make them a greater threat than floor bosses. Such monsters pose a significant danger, as they might attack adventurers for their magic stones by crossing into other floors and creating havoc. If discovered, the guild would immediately issue a bounty and might even assign adventurers to hunt them down. Now, the question was, which category did the current situation fall into? Did you see any magic stones, Ace? Tioni asked with calm emotion. No. Ace responded briefly. There's a drop item. Lefia, sharp-eyed, spotted a pair of wings amidst the dust and picked them up. Isn't it weird that there's no magic stone but there's a drop item? Tiona pressed her forehead. I've got a bad feeling about this, seriously. A strengthened species that can devour a strong dragon, Cadmus. Tioni's expression twisted slightly. This joke is not funny at all, you know. At her words, before anyone could react, Riesel, who had been staring at the entire cavern, turned and walked away. Riesel. Oh, come in, what now? Seeing Riesel's behavior, everyone turned like startled birds. Let's head back to the camp. Riesel said briefly without looking back. If his memory wasn't wrong, this expedition was the same as the one in the original work where Loki Familia encountered those creatures for the first time, then the situation at the camp was probably not going well. Seriously. Riesel sighed. Of all times, why do I run into them on my first expedition? This luck, not sure if it was good or bad. Let's go. Riesel took a step forward, picking up his pace toward the direction of the 50th floor. The girls exchanged confused glances and, one after another, followed him. The entire group rushed out of the pathway and entered the main route of the 51st floor, heading into the spacious terrain. Suddenly, a sudden piercing scream echoed through the air. Chapter 57, Concurrent Chanting. The entire group rushed out of the pathway and entered the main route of the 51st floor, heading into the spacious terrain. Suddenly, a sudden piercing scream echoed through the air. The voice just now. As the piercing scream echoed in the labyrinth and reached the ears of Riesel and his party, they all came to a sudden halt. That's Ral's voice! Tiona exclaimed. Captain! Tioni panicked as well. What's going on? Lefia was at a loss. Ace furrowed her brow, ready to dash out, but Riesel grabbed her wrist. It's here. He held her hand, his gaze piercing like a sharp blade pointing towards a fork in the path. There, a tremor, starting from a distance and intensifying, gradually approached them. Before long, several figures rushed out from the fork in the path. Captain! Tioni turned worry into joy. Unfortunately, her joy was too early. Run! Leading the way, the agile and renowned Palom hero, Finn, shouted to Riesel and his party in panic. Behind him, Gareth and Bet, who were usually fearless, were also fleeing in haste. Raoul, serving as a supporter, was carried on Bet's back, emitting black smoke and a putrid smell, looking barely conscious. Before Riesel's party could fully react to this shocking situation, it appeared. It got covered in yellow-green hues. The swollen and seemingly tender green outer skin displayed colorful veined marks. Numerous short legs formed its lower body, while its upper body seemed to rest on the elongated lower part like a small mountain, with thin, flat arms extending from both sides. At the front, 4 cracks somewhat resembled fingers. It was a worm. Or rather, it was a monster that looked like a worm. As the worm monster, towering at a height of 4 meters, moved forward, shaking up and down, it collided with the ceiling, almost equaling the width of the passage, completely blocking it. Rumble! It crashed against the walls on one side, relentlessly chasing Finn and his party from behind. What is that? Lefia couldn't help but let out a panic scream, her face turning pale. Not just Lefia, even Ace, Tiona, and Tioni, the 3 of them, instinctively took a step back, their faces displaying a look of absolute horror. The mighty level 5 first-class adventurer, the prodigy executives of Loki Familia, were now shocked by this disgustingly grotesque monster that defied all physiological acceptance. Only Riesel, upon seeing Finn and his party, wasted no time and began chanting. Follow blindly the sun in the sky, so that all will flee from thee. Blossom, armor of laurel. Remure. The deep green light membrane shimmered, one by one enveloping the bodies of Finn, Gareth, and Bet, causing their speeds to suddenly skyrocket. What is this? The trio were momentarily stunned, but shortly after, they once again heard Riesel's voice. Unleashed streak of light, bow limbs of the holy tree. You are an expert of the bow. Shoot, sniper of the fairies. Penetrate, arrow of absolute accuracy. Arc's ray. The next moment, an arc of light blasted out like a beam, narrowly passing over the heads of Finn and his party, and hitting the massive worm monster. Boom! Aok. Asterisk. The monster's entire body exploded like it was on fire, a massive blast that burned away a significant portion of its charging figure, emitting a broken trumpet-like scream. This attack finally alleviated the situation somewhat, allowing Finn, Gareth, and Bet to quickly escape the pursuit of the worm monster, relying on the enhancement provided by Riesel's protection magic. Captain! Seeing Finn and his party safe, Tioni was overjoyed and prepared to greet them. But Finn, Gareth, and Bet didn't loosen their expressions. Move! Don't just stand there! You morons! Hurry up and run! The trio, while rushing towards Riesel and his party, shouted in haste. Let's go! Riesel still took the lead in reacting, lifting the startled Lefia and running with a swift turn. Ace, almost instinctively, followed closely behind. Tiona and Tioni stood there, dumbfounded after a while, finally understanding why Finn, Gareth, and Bet had bolted without hesitation, even Riesel choosing to retreat. Because the monsters chasing them weren't just one. When Riesel blasted the first worm monster with his magic, behind it, one after another, more worm-shaped monsters appeared, trampling their kin's bodies and charging straight toward them. Are you kidding me? Run! Tiona screamed while Tioni's face turned pale. Without hesitation, the two turned and ran. In that split second, the top experts and prodigies of the Loki Familia scrambled in panic, fleeing in all directions, a spectacle that would shock onlookers who know them. Fortunately, the enhancement effect of Remure was still in play, otherwise, they might have been caught up by those huge worm monsters. What the heck is that, Finn? Tiona finally caught up, shouting at Finn. Got no clue. Finn replied, eyeing the shimmering membrane covering his body, then glancing at the calm Riesel. Can't recall anything about those creatures in my memory. This was a serious problem. As the captain of the Familia, Finn always had a meticulous and strategic approach. Every time they ventured into the dungeon, he not only memorized information about various monsters on each floor but also meticulously noted down the map of the dungeon. In terms of memory, Finn was not inferior to Riesel at all. Even for the terrain of the 51st floor, he remembered it crystal clear. Now, leading at the forefront, Finn ran without hesitation, even without checking the map, through twisting and turning paths and numerous forks, which clearly was not random running. Yet, he claimed there was no information about these worm monsters in his memory. This could only mean one thing. These monsters had never appeared before, just like the crocodile dragon that appeared on the 6th floor back then. Irregular. Ace murmured softly, making everyone's expressions turn serious. Especially when they saw what was happening behind them, their scalps tingled even more. Asterisk aok. Asterisk. Asterisk aok k. Asterisk. Rumble. Gigantic worms chased them like tanks or war chariots while extending their flat arms to grab any unfortunate monsters they encountered. Everyone witnessed a black rhinos desperately struggling, only to be swallowed whole by one of the worm monsters. The other monsters met the same fate, hunted by these worm monsters without exception, all becoming their prey. Are they devouring magic stones? Tioni said with an almost groaning tone, causing everyone's hearts to plummet. Strengthened species? So many of them. Freya, being carried by Riesel as they ran, had no time to be embarrassed, her charming face turned as white as paper as she exclaimed with fear. It wasn't until now that the girls understood why Finn, Gareth, and Bet were running. Because they were facing a horde of strengthened species. Creatures rarer than rare species, each appearance prompting the guild to issue an immediate bounty, were now appearing in the group. Could the situation get any worse? Unfortunately, it could. Get down! Riesel, who had been silent all this time, suddenly yelled. Maintaining the posture of holding Freya, he grabbed Ace's hand and abruptly lay down. Down! Finn's response was nothing short of quick. Trusting Riesel's sudden warning, he also commanded everyone to get down. In that split second, a purple, liquid-like jet sprayed out like a high-pressure water gun, hitting the wall in front of them. Asterisk SSSTTT. Asterisk. The wall hit by the purple liquid dissolved at a visible speed, turning into a puddle of mud in an instant. This scene immediately reminded Ace and the other girls of Cadmus's spring. In that place, there were many traces of things being corroded and dissolved by something similar. Could it be? They killed Cadmus. Tiona and Tioni exclaimed in unison. Raoul. Ace also understood why Raoul ended up in such a miserable state, being carried away by Bet. It was because he was directly hit by that liquid acid, suffering from corrosion. It's definitely these monsters. Riesel, who had been silent all along, muttered as he finally confirmed his speculation. His gaze on the worm monsters became sharp. The pursuing worm monsters, in the trembling eyes of everyone, one by one raised their upper bodies, opening their sticky mouths and spraying liquid shots towards them, letting the purple acid come at them one after another. Watch out your back! Don't touch that liquid! Finn shouted. No one was reckless enough to ignore his warning, especially when faced with such a terrifying acid. Immediately, everyone began to dodge, shifting positions, or swiftly jumping to and fro to evade the incoming liquid shots. Squing! Ace unsheathed her sword, seemingly ready for a fight. Ace, hold up! Bet suddenly yelled. If you slice those monsters, the acid inside their bodies will burst out and splatter everywhere. Raoul got hit by that mess too. With that reminder, Ace had to halt her steps that were about to charge forward. Riesel! Gareth called out to Riesel. Can you pull off another magic? Since close combat was not an option, they had to resort to long-range attacks, and among them, Riesel was the only one capable of executing them. Arc's Ray. Without hesitation, Riesel, who had already completed his magic chant, unleashed a beam of light in an arc, cutting through space and hitting the acid-spewing worm. Arc's Ray. Arc's Ray. Arc's Ray. Asterisk AOK. Asterisk. One after another, chants and releases, creating successive arcs of light that strike one worm monster after another, making them emit pitiful cries. The explosions and cries mixed together, giving the air a hint of the smell of gunpowder, vibrating through the entire dungeon floor. Everyone watched as Riesel, still carrying Hephaestus, calmly dodged liquid shots while continuously chanting and blasting magic calmly. Seeing this scene, their gazes changed. Concurrent chanting. Finn's whisper held both amazement and relief. Damn monster! Bet couldn't help but curse. Chapter 58, A Race Against Time. It was obvious that magic required extreme concentration and the correct chant to be cast. Generally, the more powerful the magic output, the longer the chant. Casters needed to exercise more precise control to prevent the gradual transformation of magical energy into uncontrollable force, leading to failed magic activation or accidental magical energy explosions, potentially harming themselves and others. So, whether it was a mage or anyone else, when using magic, they all stood in place, focusing on chanting, preparing to cast their magic with full concentration without exception. However, there were those who could multitask, chanting magic while taking action in other aspects. They could multitask, handling both chanting and combat, turning into high-powered mobile artillery, calmly and steadily destroying enemies. This thrilling and special technique of multitasking, conducting both combat and magic simultaneously, was called concurrent chanting. Those who could flexibly use this skill were extremely rare experts, even among high-class adventurers. It was equivalent to defusing a bomb with both hands while fighting, a dangerous technique that everyone knew was incredibly difficult to master. But once mastered, even rearguard mages who typically required protection or someone's protection in battle could transform into mobile artillery that roamed the entire battlefield, becoming nightmares that haunted their enemies, a one-man army. Now, in front of Loki Familia's members, there was such a formidable presence demonstrating this special technique. Arc's Ray. As Riesel deftly dodged another stream of acid shot, swiftly unleashing his magic to knock down yet another worm, the top executives of Loki Familia who watched this spectacle were utterly stunned. Attacking, dodging, moving, chanting, Riesel handled 4 actions simultaneously, yet there was no sign of disorder in his magic. It was calmly unleashed, hitting one worm after another. This scene left not only others but even Hephaestus, who had always been with him, astonished. Such proficient, calm, stable, and diversified concurrent chanting, even Hephaestus had only seen it in her mentor, Freya. Thanks to this, Riesel alone overwhelmed the horde of worm monsters that rushed forward like war chariots, causing explosions to continuously erupt at the entrance of the passage, shattering the ceiling and walls into fragments piled up together. Asterisk AOK. Asterisk. The worm monsters growled in anger. Not only were they forced back by grand explosions time and again, but they were also hindered by the piled-up rubble. Rubble. Finn's eyes light up, then shouted to Riesel. There it is. Riesel. Hit above. Hearing that, Riesel paused, and shortly afterward, understood Finn's meaning. Without delay, he dashed like the wind, narrowly avoiding another acid shot, and raised his hand to cast short chant magic that he had used countless times before. Arc's Ray. Asterisk boom. Asterisk. This time, the tracking light arrow didn't hit the monsters but struck the ceiling, shattering it right at the entrance of the passage. Rumble. As a result, countless rubble fell, crashing to the ground. Gradually piling up, they formed a huge pile of stones, blocking the passage entirely. Asterisk AAAOK. Asterisk. The worm monsters screamed, attempting to charge forward but failed. The continuously falling rocks eventually completely blocked the entire passage, trapping the horde of worm monsters on the other side. The roaring noise gradually diminished and soon disappeared completely. Yada! Tiona cheered. Captain! Tioni ran toward Finn's direction. Did we make it? Gareth breathed a sigh of relief. Fuck! At least we're rid of those disgusting shits. Bet spat in disdain. Only Ace ran towards Riesel's direction. Are you okay? Ace quickly asked and stared at his body intensely. I'm fine. Riesel shook his head, calmly setting Lefia down from his arms. Mr. Riesel, for you. Lefia quickly rummaged through her backpack, taking out a mind recovery potion and handing it to him. It was her instinctive move. In Lefia's eyes, Riesel had just released so much magic that his mind was surely depleting fast. After handing over the potion, she just realized that he might not actually need a mind recovery potion. With his highest rank spirit healing development ability, even if he carelessly cast magic, it was far from depleting his mind. This made her feel a bit awkward. For a moment, she didn't know whether to continue offering the potion or retract it. Thanks. Seeing Lefia's awkwardness, Riesel smiled and accepted the mind recovery potion from her hand. Mr. Riesel. Lefia looked at him with a mix of gratitude and admiration. Indeed, Mr. Riesel is like Miss Ace. He seemed cold on the surface but was actually a kind and thoughtful person. The elf glanced at Riesel and then at Ace beside him, feeling a sense of double joy. At this moment, Finn and the others finally caught up. Is everyone okay? Finn glanced at everyone. Everyone shook their heads one after another, except for Bet, who smirked. We had a narrow escape, but this guy we're dragging along might not make it. Bet was, of course, referring to Raoul, slung over his back. Ugh, ugh. Raoul unconsciously groaned, his body still emitting smoke and a foul odor, looking very miserable. Why aren't you guys helping him recover? Tiona was getting anxious. Lefia, elixir. Tioni urged. Here. Lefia immediately took out an elixir from her backpack. Give it to me. Gareth took it, pulled open the bottle cap, and poured the potion over Raoul's body. We've lost all our items. Finn sighed and shook his head. Raoul is the supporter of our party, but unfortunately, he got drenched by those monsters' acid. Look at him now, everything on his body is basically impossible to survive, all instantly dissolved. All of it. Tioni was stunned. Yet. Bet said through gritted teeth. Not just our items, even our weapons got dissolved. Those fucking monsters are basically the bane of close combatants like us. Upon closer inspection, whether it was Finn, Gareth, or Bet, their weapons were all gone. Especially Bet, his boots were still emitting smoke, obviously completely dissolved. Thank goodness I didn't charge in and hack at them. Tiona's forehead was dripping with sweat. Even Riesel had his eyes twitched. No choice. Finn's, Gareth's, and Bet's weapons weren't ordinary equipment, each one was almost first-class equipment, and it was basically impossible to obtain them for less than 100 million valis on the market. Now they were all dissolved, the cost of loss would be quite hefty. I messed up this time. Finn said in reflection. If we had a mage in our party, our situation would definitely be much better. Dealing with those worm monsters could only be done from far away as Riesel did. Otherwise, once you got close, your weapons would dissolve. Injuring those worm monsters in close proximity was the same as injuring yourself. Finn's mistake was not having a mage in his party, leaving them helpless against those worm monsters. They had no other choice but to flee. Thanks to you this time, Riesel. Finn shifted his mood and looked at Riesel with a grateful expression. It's really impressive how you did concurrent chanting so effortlessly. Riesel only gave a slight smile, appearing calm in response to Finn's praise. Indeed, concurrent chanting was a sophisticated skill, but its main core trick was actually quite simple. It was all about keeping a calm mind. As long as your mind was calm and could stay composed in the face of danger, achieving concurrent chanting wasn't as difficult as it seemed. A bit of practice was all it took. Riesel had a natural advantage in this aspect. Facing imminent danger, he never panicked or got nervous. Instead, he became more excited and thrilled, probably because of the circumstances of his previous life that made him this way. Therefore, while concurrent chanting might seem like an advanced technique to others, for him, it was almost like a natural thing. This made Riesel not particularly proud or happy with accomplishing concurrent chanting. Even when praised by Finn and looked at admiringly by others, he didn't make a big deal out of it. Let's quickly head back to the camp. More concerned with the situation at hand, Riesel changed the topic. Finn also understood his implication. Is the camp in danger? Finn's expression turned serious. The camp in danger? Everyone was equally surprised. I have a bad feeling, feel like something is going to happen over there. Riesel said calmly to everyone. Of course, this was just a way to brush off some questions. In reality, he was sure that something had happened at the camp. During this expedition, Loki Familia encountered a new species of monster, facing many irregulars that could devour even the strong dragon, Cadmus. This was an incident mentioned in the original work. After confirming that this expedition matched the one mentioned in the original work, Riesel was almost certain that the camp, like their current situation, had been attacked by these monsters. "Oi, is this for real or what?" Bet asked, somewhat skeptical. "Don't tell me these monsters could actually go to the safe floor, climb down from the 51st floor to the 50th floor." Tiona blurted out something beyond her wildest imagination. Strengthened species have this uncontrollable craving for magic stones, so they often cross floors to devour other monsters to get stronger or even attack adventurers carrying magic stones. "We've been slaying monsters and collecting magic stones all the way here, and all those magic stones are piled up in the camp." Tiona said her assumption while biting her nails, causing a widespread sense of unease among everyone. "Don't say that," Finn said solemnly. "My thumb is throbbing in pain. Let's get back as soon as possible." Everyone agreed and nodded simultaneously. Without a word, they all started running toward their camp location. PSSSTTT. At the same time, the pile of rocks blocking the passage began emitting black smoke, gradually dissolving and revealing the slowly emerging bodies of yellow-green worms. A life and death race against time was about to begin. Chapter 59, Accident. Dungeon, 50th floor. When the two commission parties returned to this floor, the scene that greeted them immediately signaled that the worst had happened. Boom! An explosion echoed from a cliff, its rock surface covered in yellow-green grime. People were yelling. Monsters were roaring, destroying, and trampling everything in their path. "Looks like we're under attack again." Finn stared at the black smoke rising from the cliff, his expression grim. "Riveria." Ace panicked and had an even more intense reaction. Finally abandoning self-restraint, she shot out like an arrow. "Miss Ace." Lefia was surprised. Almost simultaneously, another form on Lefia's side turned into an afterimage and leaped out. "Mr. Riesel." Seeing Riesel also charging out, Lefia couldn't hold back and followed suit. "Damn it!" Bet cursed and rushed ahead. Tiona, Tioni, and Lefia, not to mention Finn, Gareth, and Raoul, who had just caught their breath, also rushed toward the cliff without hesitation, driven by bad premonitions. Ace was the first to reach the destination. She climbed the cliff, dashed through the forest, and soon saw an open plain with a flat rock platform serving as a makeshift camp. However, the once orderly camp was now almost a ruin. Every member flocked together and engaged in combat with many enormous worm-like creatures attached to the rocks. "Quick! Raise your shields!" Riveria, protected in the middle, shouted urgently. Around her, all the expedition party members formed a circle. Dwarves and beastmen held shields at the forefront, blocking the corrosive acid sprayed by the worm monsters, protecting everyone. Unfortunately, this wouldn't last. The acid from the worm monsters was too powerful. Even their thick shields quickly dissolved upon contact with the acid. They could only throw away shields one after another, using this extremely wasteful method to resist the onslaught of the worm monsters. The rearguard, protecting Riveria, used magic and arrows, occasionally hitting 1 to 2 worm monsters, causing them to explode on the spot and spray countless acids, corroding every corner of the camp. This scene was like a nightmare. Seeing this scene, Ace charged ahead without hesitation. Piuchi. As a silver light flashed, a worm monster, ready to attack, was cut in half by a sword. As it screamed and splattered a large amount of acid, expedition party members defending the camp felt a gust of wind blowing in front of them. Ace drew her sword without saying a word, flipping through the air several times to skillfully dodge the splashing acid liquid. She soon landed in front of everyone. "Ace! Miss Ace!" Riveria and the others exclaimed with delight. "Argh!" Just as everyone's attention was drawn to Ace's sudden appearance, a beastman at the corner of the circle of shields was knocked away by a worm monster, exposing a catgirl who was preparing to take out a potion to heal her companion. Aki! Raoul, who had just climbed up the cliff, happened to witness this scene and shouted in panic with cracked eye sockets. The catgirl was Anakity. Anakity didn't even react, only turned her head to look at a massive worm monster that appeared in front of her, her mind blank. The monster's grotesque mouth opened wide towards her, spraying a large amount of acid liquid that poured down like torrential rain, ready to envelop her body. Tempest! In the nick of time, a short chanting appeared. Whoosh! A sudden hurricane swept through, and a figure following closely behind Ace exploded, blowing away the smoke and atmospheric dust, and increasing his speed dramatically. Riesel, like a hurricane passing through, blew away all the worm monsters in his path with his tornado, making it seem like an uninhabited space. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of Anakity. Swish! As a high-pressured acid shot out, Riesel's hermit easily sliced through it, causing an explosion of purple liquid. The liquid splashed around but was flicked away by the wind surrounding him. "Are you okay?" Riesel asked calmly and didn't turn around, only staring at the worm monster in front of him, speaking to the cat girl behind him. Anakity didn't reply. She just stared blankly at the youth's back in front of her, at the swordsman wrapped in a hurricane. For some reason, she had lost her words. Hearing no answer, Riesel felt strange and wanted to turn his head to her, but the worm monster in front of him took action again. *AOK. *. It emitted an angrily frustrated scream, continuously spraying acid toward him. "Be careful!" Seeing this, Riveria couldn't help but shout, only to find it unnecessary. Riesel didn't even bother to dodge and just waved his sword casually, one by one cutting away the oncoming acid shots. The splattering liquids were also blocked by the wind enveloping his body, unable to touch his body at all. Seeing this, not only Riveria but also Finn, who had followed along, instantly understood. Ariel countered the acid of the worm monster and effortlessly kept them from getting anywhere near Riesel's body. In other words, anyone using Ariel could easily take on these worm monsters that were the nemesis of close combatants. Tempest. Ace, realizing it, immediately chanted Ariel, summoning the power of the wind just like Riesel did. Both of them exchanged a glance and, without a word, rode the wind and charged out. *AOK. Several worm monsters sensed the two approaching hurricanes. One after another, they turned away from attacking other people and instead aimed at Riesel and Ace, spraying countless streams of acid at them. Faced with the purple acid barrage raining down like a storm, both Riesel and Ace didn't dodge. Instead, they accelerated, letting the wind of their bodies collide with the oncoming acid storm, deflecting them all. Swish! Finally, the sword light erupted. Riesel and Ace rushed into the worm monster horde in tandem. Their weapons carried the force of the wind, turning into streaks of sword light, slaughtering the worm monsters one by one without mercy. Puchi, 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 Puchi. Each worm monster was instantly gutted, cut down by both of them, emitting a piercing scream, and splattering countless streams of purple liquid. Riesel and Ace were like two wolves charging into a flock of sheep, one on the left and one on the right, one in front and one behind, like two tornadoes, charging back and forth, killing one worm monster after another with their swords, causing the purple liquid to spray continuously around them. Not long after, the ground, walls, and the nearby forest were corroded by the splattering acid, emitting black smoke and gradually melting. Only Riesel and Ace, completely ignoring the acid spraying towards them, charged through with Ariel fearlessly, killing worm monsters one after another, wailing without end. "Well done! Nice!" Tiona and Tioni couldn't help but shout as if releasing pent-up frustration. "Mr. Riesel, Miss Ace, amazing!" Lefia exclaimed like a fangirl, clasping both hands with endless admiration shining in her eyes as she observed the scene. "Aki! Are you okay?" Raoul rushed over in a panic, making a big fuss. I am fine." Anakity, who had been staring blankly, finally came to her senses. Her eyes were fixed on Riesel's figure, who was slaughtering monsters in the horde, eyes shining with admiration. "Tch, all the glory's been stolen." Bet had an extremely displeased look as he gazed at the scene. If it weren't for his weapon being destroyed, he absolutely wouldn't hesitate to join the fray. He would charge up and smash at least one or two worm monsters. Watching Riesel and Ace fight while he just stood helplessly was not something his pride would allow. "Looks like we've dodged a crisis, hey?" Finn expressed with relief as he and Gareth approached Riveria. They observed Riesel and Ace effortlessly slaughtering the worm monsters, which somewhat eased their minds. Need to admit, they were genuinely scared this time. A horde of strengthened species from the deep floors attacked in droves, coupled with their corrosive acid. If it weren't for Riesel and Ace, getting through this crisis wouldn't have been so easy. As he watched the splattering of acid spreading, almost reaching their side, Finn quickly gave an order. "Everyone retreat! Don't linger here!" His command brought unwilling expressions to many faces. So, the camp is destroyed, hey. Well, looks like this expedition is done for. Tiona and Tioni spoke tiredly one after another and sighed with resignation. Their camp, completely destroyed and corroded by the worm monsters, now showed no signs of anything intact, including food, tools, and equipment. All supplies, just like Rawl's backpack on his back, were dissolved to nothing. Now that Finn had ordered a retreat, there was no doubt that they wouldn't be able to continue the expedition. No choice. Weapons destroyed, supplies nearly gone. Even if we survive this trouble, we don't have the ability to continue to the 59th floor, and can only retreat. Gareth shook his head lightly. A bunch of disgusting shits. Next time, I'll definitely kick their fucking asses. Bet cursed, expressing what everyone was thinking. This time is a failure, but we'll come back next time. Finn calmly said. We were unprepared this time, lacking effective means to deal with these new species monsters. But next time, I swear, we will turn the tide. Just like when they arrived at the 58th floor last time and were forced back by the monsters of that floor, Finn never feared failure. If it doesn't work this time, then next time. If not next time, then the time after. Make Loki Familia, one of the strongest in Orario, give up? Make the world-renowned braver give up? Impossible. At this moment, numerous ideas flashed through Finn's mind as he had already outlined the strategy for the next expedition. However, in the next moment, an unexpected accident happened. A dazzling array of colorful particles suddenly fell from the sky, landing on Riesel and Ace, who were in the middle of slaughtering the worm monsters. In the next second, those countless particles suddenly lit up. Boom, 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 boom. A massive explosion suddenly engulfed the horde of worm monsters, along with Riesel and Ace. Riesel. Alias. Shouts of lamentation echoed through the sky from every member of Loki Familia. Chapter 60, New Monster. At the edge of the cliff, the explosions of fire erupted one after another, expanding outward. Every member of Loki Familia watched as this sudden sea of fire appeared, each one losing their composure. Especially Freya, who witnessed Riesel and Ace being engulfed by the fire, staggered and almost fainted. Luckily, Finn, Gareth, and Riveria held everyone back, otherwise, they would have absolutely charged forward without thinking. Those two are fine. Riveria's words had just echoed when two gusts of wind blew away the fire waves, revealing Riesel and Ace emerging from the flames almost simultaneously, a bit messy but with no apparent injuries. Mr. Riesel! Miss Ace! Freya exclaimed with joy, and the others were relieved as well. However, Riesel and Ace stared straight ahead, their expressions becoming solemn. Freya was about to run over to check on them, but the two stopped her. Don't come, Freya! Ace called out without looking back. What happened? Freya had to stop in her tracks, standing there in surprise. At that moment, Riesel's voice slowly resonated. A big one is coming. His tone was calm and indifferent, but the content made everyone present uneasy. It wasn't until after a while that everyone understood what he meant by a big one is coming. Boom! A massive arm extended from below the cliff, slamming onto the cliff face, and creating a loud noise. A flat-shaped arm seemed to be supporting something as a gigantic figure slowly rose from below the cliff, entering the eyes of everyone present. At that moment, every adventurer present fell silent. Upon closer inspection, it turned out to be a monster about 6 meters tall. Similar to the worm monster, it had a yellow-green body and flat-shaped arms, like an enlarged version of the worm monster, but with significant differences in overall appearance. For example, the upper body, like a mountain, was no longer beast-like but had smooth, curving humanoid features. While its flat-shaped arms were no longer just outlines, they resembled fish fins, with pairs on each side, 2 on each upper arm. Several tube-like organs hung down from the back of its head, while the colorful hues on its yellow-green body seemed chaotic as if a mysterious deadly poison had invaded. The intense colors extended to the upper half of its face, which lacked a nose, eyes, and mouth-only contours, reminiscent of a female humanoid features. This monster's appearance was akin to a worm metamorphosing into a butterfly, strangely beautiful in a way. However, this less than flattering beauty was overshadowed by its massively protruding, lack of smooth lines, and downright ugly purple-black abdomen. The female-like worm monsters crawled up from the cliff as if hatching from an egg, emitting an excited, soprano-like scream into the world. The piercing sound made several people present feel physically uncomfortable, prompting them to vomit directly. What? What the hell is that? Does the dungeon have a monster like this? Tiona and Tioni let out screams one after another that sounded almost miserable. Another disgusting piece of shit. Bet spat on the ground without hesitation. Meanwhile, the expressions of Finn, Riveria, and Gareth turned serious. Oi, this doesn't look good at all. Gareth's whisper echoed the thoughts of most people present. It wasn't just because a colossal monster comparable to a floor boss appeared before them, but also because of its undisguised malice. After the female-like worm monster screamed, it started to move. It opened its 4 flat arms as if intending to embrace someone gently. But with this movement, colorful particles spread from its embrace. Without a doubt, this monster was the source of the massive explosion just now. Fall back! Finn ordered in a hair-trigger voice, causing everyone present to twitch, turning around without hesitation and running with all their might. Ace! Got it! Riesel and Ace also chose not to confront it head-on and retreated as fast as possible. The colorful particles fell like pollen, scattering across the entire cliff. Then, boom, 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 boom. Tremendously intense explosions occurred one after another without any surprise. All the particles that touched the ground and the remnants of the camp turned into tiny but powerful bombs at this very moment, exploding successively. A fire wave surged, heat churned, and the exploding flames were like a fiery red tide, engulfing everything with astonishing power, destroying everything in its path. Under such massive explosions, the cliff finally crumbled and collapsed like a torrent. Every member of the expedition party could only dodge and jump amidst the torrent of rubble, stepping on shattered pieces of the cliff, sliding down from the edge, and being chased by the rubble. Some even jumped down without any regard for safety. If it weren't for Finn and other first-class adventurers assisting, many lower-level members would have surely met their demise. Lefia. Ace, wrapped in the wind, held onto the falling Lefia as if flying through the air. As for Riesel, he briefly danced in midair with Ariel and left all the rescue work to Finn and the others. Without delay, he dispersed the flame and darted toward the female-like worm monster, alone. The arms under the monster, which caused the massive explosion, swayed and waved, running on the cliff walls like a spider. It was evident that it had no intention of letting anyone present escape. It chased after everyone down the cliff, accompanying the rushing torrent of rubble. At the same time, it lifted its upper body, allowing the featureless facial area to split open, revealing a grotesque mouth. PSSST. The intense corrosive acid was immediately sprayed out by the female-like worm monster. The scale and speed were much stronger than the normal worm monster. If the acid sprayed by the worm monster was likened to a high-pressure water gun, what the female-like worm monster sprayed out was more like a high-pressure water cannon. Many people became targets of the monster, watching helplessly as a large amount of corrosive acid approached, their faces showing a look of fear. Seeing this, Riesel immediately began to chant. Unleashed streak of light, bow limbs of the holy tree. You are an expert of the bow. Shoot, sniper of the fairies. Penetrate, arrow of absolute accuracy. Arc's ray. The arrow of light was released and quickly caught up with the acid in motion. Boom! The arrow of light and the acid collided immediately, exploding each other. Riesel immediately used Ariel to intercept the splashing acid. Sizzle sizzle sizzle. An incredible corrosive sound echoed as the exploding acid touched the cliff walls and the ground, making large holes wherever it made contact. Under such corrosion, the cliff wall immediately collapsed after becoming riddled with holes, making the torrent of rubble even larger while emitting thick black smoke. Weary saved. The expedition party members who were almost hit by the acid let out relieved sighs. Move quickly! Riesel shouted at them. Yes. The expedition party members, originally supposed to be seniors, unconsciously followed his command without hesitation. This was the change brought about by strength. In a situation where even the Familia executives had to flee, Riesel came alone to confront countless monsters, protecting them. Just this act alone was enough to earn the respect of everyone. However, the crisis was far from over. Rumble. The female-like worm monster, seeing its attack blocked by Riesel, immediately changed its target and locked onto him. Its huge body swung, charging like a train. Bang! Riesel was about to make a move when the monster swept out its flat-shaped arm, hitting his body and sending him flying. Mr. Riesel! Lefia, held by Ace, couldn't help but shout in panic. Watching Riesel get hit, Everyone's face turned pale. Despite its big size, how can it move so quickly? Finn furrowed his brow. It was well known that large monsters shared a common weakness: they were not adept at precise and fast movements. However, this female-like worm monster completely lacked this disadvantage. Its massive body charged forward while agilely changing direction. The range of motion for its flat-shaped arms was also extensive, not only delivering confusing and rapid movements but also whipping like a flexible whip. It didn't have the natural drawbacks of large monsters. Of course, the most fearsome aspect was the corrosive acid, as this acid could dissolve even a cliff. Among everyone present, probably only Riesel and Ace with their aerial were capable of withstanding it. This was the most challenging part because it rendered level 6 like Finn useless. Even if they succeed in killing these worm monsters, their weapons and bodies would be corroded by the exploding acid inside the bodies of these monsters, completely sealing off the possibility of close combat. This made level 6 close combatant experts like Finn and Gareth incapable of approaching and forced to retreat repeatedly. Originally, a rearguard mage like Riveria could still be useful. But now, looking at the size of the female-like worm monster and its bulging abdomen, Finn had reason to believe that if she used her magic on this monster, once it fell, it would likely self-destruct on the spot, just like the previous worm monsters. With a monster this massive self-destructing, how much acid would it release? Finn strongly suspected that when this monster self-destructed, the surrounding area would be enveloped in corrosive acid. In other words, once they killed this monster, most, if not all, of the people present would die. Things were really becoming more troublesome. We have to retreat. As Finn finished pondering and made a decision, suddenly, Ark's ray. An arrow of light came from a distance, hitting the female-like worm monster clinging to the cliff wall and knocking it down with a thunderous roar. Riesel, covered in the wind, dived in, crashing directly into its body. Boom! With a tremendous sound, he transformed into a tornado, carrying the monster away from everyone. Mr. Riesel! Riesel! Everyone exclaimed in succession, panic was evident in their voices. Meanwhile, Finn remained composed as he quickly grasped Riesel's plan. Does he want to take that monster away from this area, fighting it alone?
Thanks for listening.